the surgical fruit in American comics. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 S.H.I.E.L.D. Terra Grigia, a high-tech city and artificial floating island located on the Mediterranean Sea, was built with funding from numerous countries and funded by the United Nations. It has become a crucial branch of the FBC and BSAA. It's not the headquarters because it's on the front lines of the fight against biological weapons, bringing together biotechnology experts from around the world to research vaccines for biochemical viruses to combat the growing prevalence of these weapons. Long time no see, Shen Fei said as he followed the crowd off the plane. He immediately spotted Rebecca, who had come to greet him. Standing beside her was Jill. If it weren't for Rebecca, I wouldn't have guessed it was you. Welcome to the BSAA. Jill looked surprised upon seeing Shen Fei. Even though he'd heard about Shen Fei from Rebecca before, seeing him in person was still a shock. The little boy from back then had grown so much. You're the most admirable. Rebecca told me everything about you. Jill and Chris have been fighting on the front lines against biological weapons for years. This is reality. This is biological weapons, a place where even the slightest mistake could lead to death. Naturally, Shen Fei admires such people. Compared to them, Shen Fei's motives for joining the BSAA are somewhat more ulterior. It's now been a year since Shen Fei went to stay at Stark's New York villa. Shen Fei has already spent a year at Empire State College, and thanks to his opera fruit, he's become somewhat of a well-known figure in medicine and biochemistry. He came to the BSAA for an internship. Shen Fei originally wanted to do many internships, so there was no need to travel so far. There were plenty of companies in New York that would accept him, such as Stark Group and the FBC. Even if he didn't intern, it wouldn't matter. Shen Fei was now a billionaire, so he could skip the whole process by simply revealing his identity. Under Pepper's direction, the new company progressed remarkably smoothly. This was also due to the strength of the Stark Group. Without Stark's support, the new company's rapid growth would have been impossible. If it were Shen Fei, now so wealthy, he would have been content to live a life of idleness and wait for death. But this is the Marvel Universe, and that's a very difficult thing to do. Shen Fei was considered a genius in this world, having graduated from Imperial University in just 1 year. But upon entering this world, he realized that talent was truly worthless. Shen Fei hadn't encountered any geniuses before because he wasn't in this world. Now that he's in it, he realizes that, while geniuses aren't exactly plentiful, they're far more numerous than he'd imagined. Shen Fei's skills are impressive among ordinary people, but not exceptional among geniuses. Joining BSAA would have been impossible for him, but he has connections. Rebecca. Originally, Rebecca wanted Shen Fei to join the FBC. While the outside world wasn't entirely clear about Shen Fei's abilities, Rebecca was fully aware, as the two of them frequently discussed the subject. Initially, Shen Fei had been asking Rebecca for advice on these matters, but now they could discuss them together, a significant improvement. Ultimately, however, Shen Fei declined the FBC and opted for the BSAA. Firstly, the FBC was affiliated with S.H.I.E.L.D, and, not to mention Hydra, it boasted countless experts. At Shen Fei's age, joining would have meant him serving only as a researcher. Secondly, bioinfectious viruses were Shen Fei's primary motivation for abandoning his billionaire status and joining the BSAA. There, he would have a much greater chance of encountering viruses. As for stealing viruses and conducting his own research, Shen Fei's magical powers certainly wouldn't be a problem, but without a solid understanding of bioinfectious viruses, stealing them was far too dangerous. Furthermore, without a properly isolated laboratory, studying the virus would be impossible. After all, it was a virus, and a leak would be disastrous. Shen Fei, who had been focused on his studies this year, hadn't built a laboratory like this, and it wasn't something one could just casually create. Let's take you to your accommodations first, and then we'll have dinner together tonight, Rebecca said in the car. Sorry, I might not be able to make it. Chris needs support. Before Shen Fei could say anything, Jill spoke first. There's trouble? Rebecca asked seriously. Yes, Chris seems to have spotted him, although Jill didn't say who it was. Rebecca's changing expression told her who he was referring to. Then be careful, Rebecca said after a long silence. The atmosphere in the car then grew serious. leaving Shen Fei unsure what to say for a moment, but fortunately, he kept quiet. "See you tonight." After dropping Shen Fei off at his accommodations, Rebecca drove Jill away. Nice environment, although the room wasn't too large, it had everything you needed, and Shen Fei was quite satisfied. Even though Shen Fei was now extremely wealthy, he hadn't moved into a larger, more luxurious villa in New York. After all, he lived alone and didn't need such a large space. Of course, it was probably a habit formed in his past life. Next, it's time to truly encounter viruses. Years passed, and Shen Fei's strength gradually improved. However, he hadn't encountered viruses since the Raccoon City incident. Back then, he didn't understand the structure of viruses, but that wasn't a problem anymore. The more he learned about viruses, the more terrifying they became. For Shen Fei, who possessed the Operation Fruit, destroying the world wasn't a problem. The human world was full of terrifying viruses, like the charcoal maggot virus and the Ebola virus, which were no less powerful than the T-virus. Numerous research institutes in the United States were studying these viruses. Fortunately, these viruses were generally difficult to obtain, otherwise the news wouldn't be about terrorist suicide bombers, but about human biological bombs. Therefore, Shen Fei decided not to abuse the power of the Operation Fruit. At most, he would use it to enhance his own strength. He wouldn't attempt to use it to achieve universal human evolution. He would leave the evolution of humanity to nature. During his year at New York University, Shen Fei met many scientists who championed humanity, yet in reality, most of them were driven by their own ambitions. Individualistic heroism is a common problem among many American scientists. They all believe they have the aura of a hero, that they are the smartest, that everyone else is foolish, and that their research can change the world. Even Tony is not immune to this. His sharp tongue is only because his last name is Stark, otherwise he would have been beaten up long ago. As his mind wandered, Shen Fei opened his safe, took out a small box, and set it aside. Instantly, the small box expanded to the size of a safe. Upon opening it, he saw it was filled with drinks. After removing several bottles, Shen Fei immediately shrank the box and put it back into the safe. Just as most listed products of capital-backed companies are never the most advanced technologies, the potion Shen Fei had taken out to collaborate with Stark was certainly not his best product. His best product was the drink he now held, a potion that continuously enhanced physical fitness and also relieved mental fatigue. He had used the surgery fruit to purchase every Chinese herbal medicine on the market and then synthesized it himself using the power of the surgery fruit. The ingredients used were rare traditional Chinese medicines, such as ginseng and Polygonum multiflorum. It was a pity that ancient herbs like century- or thousand-year-old ginseng were rare these days, otherwise, he could have done a much better job. It's time. Noticing the time he'd agreed to meet Rebecca had arrived, Shen Fei immediately took out a bottle of wine and prepared to go to the restaurant. This wine, a gift from Stark, was a rare treasure, worth hundreds of thousands. After Shen Fei blended it with the surgery fruit, the price would likely be even higher if he sold it. Why did the aged wine taste so good? It was because of the microorganisms within it. Others might not be able to combat these microorganisms, but the surgery fruit could. As he learned more, the surgery fruit's applications expanded, extending beyond medicine to include alcohol, beverages, and even rice. Chapter 27 Floating Island Incident, Part 1. It's truly a completely solar-powered city, Shen Fei said with some emotion as he gazed at the numerous solar panels in the distance. Terra Grigia Island is arguably the only city in the world powered entirely by solar energy. A solar array satellite constantly orbits overhead, ensuring Terra Grigia's power supply remains constant, regardless of the weather. Many scientists are delighted by the development of this technology, as it represents a significant advancement in humanity's use of solar energy. Energy has always been a major global issue. Mastering energy means mastering the future. This statement is no joke. Even with the world boasting numerous cutting-edge energy technologies, oil remains a top priority for all nations. Oil's role is immense, extending beyond refining fuel oil. Even if energy can be extracted from the wind, the sun, or even various elements in the future, its importance will not diminish significantly. Shen Fei knew this because pharmaceuticals also require oil. With the FBC under S.H.I.E.L.'s control, there shouldn't be any accidents. To most people, the solar array satellite was just an energy satellite, but Shen Fei knew it wasn't just an energy satellite, it was also a satellite weapon. So, Hydra's project inside is just a rehash of what others have said. Shen Fei was certain that if solar array satellites weren't so slow to launch as weapons, the objects launched by Project Insight wouldn't be space battleships, but solar arrays. Looking up at the sky, Shen Fei couldn't help but sigh. Hydra was so secretive, its internal systems so strict, but in reality, the top brass were short-sighted. Even if the so-called Project Insight succeeded, it wouldn't last. Where there's oppression, there's resistance. Project Insight was nothing more than a draconian version of the rule of law, a relic of the ancient Chinese dynasty. Xiangyang's harsh penalties were so severe, yet the Qin dynasty ultimately failed. The key to governing a country is to alternate between tension and relaxation. Keeping the string constantly taut will eventually break. Alexander Pierce is an idiot. That supposedly legitimate Hydra clan member, Malik, isn't that smart. He's been wanting to bring back the Hive for centuries, aiming for world domination without any real effort. He only wants to take the Hive back and reap the benefits from its power. Haha, in that respect, he's no match for Pierce. At least Pierce is working hard. For years, besides studying and training, Shen Fei has been trying his best to recall everything about Hydra. They've all been taken advantage of, and even if they've suffered losses, they dare not publicize them. Especially the Malik family. They control access to another planet, a world suitable for human survival, and presumably not far from Earth. If the Maliks hadn't been so focused on bringing back the Hive, instead focusing on destroying it and monopolizing that planet, they might have already established themselves there. Even if it's a bit desolate, it's still a planet after all. If Shen Fei wasn't so unsure about defeating the Hive, he might have tried to take the Black Stone from the Malik clan and open the door. For the mages of Kamar-Taj, opening the door was a simple task. To plan for future development, Shen Fei had drawn up 5-year and 10-year plans, all based on the major events in his memory. Whether he could reap the benefits from them depended on specific circumstances. He couldn't leave Earth right now, as he might have gone to the void and possibly obtained the DNA of an ancient god. Surely, long time no see, at the restaurant they had arranged, Shen Fei encountered 2 people who surprised him. One was Shirley Platinum. After not seeing her for several years, Shirley had blossomed into striking beauty. The other was the red-haired Natasha, the legendary Black Widow. Shen Fei later learned that Shirley was Natasha's partner, or more accurately, that she was learning how to be a good agent with Natasha. Is Shirley going to become an Avenger? Shen Fei couldn't help but wonder after hearing Shirley's introduction. After a moment's reflection, Shen Fei realized that Shirley might indeed become an Avenger one day. After all, Shirley possessed the power of the G-Virus, granting her instantaneous recovery abilities. Her physical fitness, influenced by the virus, was far superior to that of an average person. If she were to be trained by Black Widow, she'd definitely become Fury's trusted confidant. The next Captain America isn't out of the question, a female Captain America, Shen Fei thought, his imagination flaring. This is a rare gem. I'm so lucky today. Upon seeing the wine Shen Fei had brought, Natasha immediately explained it to Rebecca. It's important to understand that an agent, especially a female agent or an ace agent, not only needs to be beautiful but also needs to acquire a wealth of knowledge. Beauty is paramount because most men are not wary of beautiful women. Isn't this wine expensive? Shirley was surprised after hearing Natasha's explanation. Not only is it expensive, but some people can't even afford it. This is from Chateau Luxarlis, a place most people might not even have heard of, Natasha said. Compared to the Grand Cru Chateau Luxarus, the world-renowned Lafite is a level lower. In the wine classification system, Lafite is classified as a premier cru. It was a gift from the Stark Group. I have some business dealings with him. His collaboration with the Stark Group wasn't something that needed to be kept secret, so Rebecca and Shirley knew about it. He had told them before. That playboy isn't a good person. Don't try to imitate him. Shirley didn't seem to like Stark very much, which was actually quite normal. Before becoming Iron Man, Stark had always had a playboy image. I don't have the money, and I've barely met him. Stark, busy picking up girls, didn't have the time to pay attention to him. After all, in Stark's eyes, he was just an adult. They then discussed the events of Raccoon City. This wine, after taking a sip of the Grand Cru Chateau Luxarus, Natasha's eyes flickered with surprise. Natasha then examined the bottle carefully again before getting up and going to the bathroom. Inside, she pulled out a container and spat out some of the liquid. The reason for Natasha's actions was simple. She'd had this wine before, But the taste of this bottle was vastly different. A normal person wouldn't have paid much attention to such a thing, but Natasha was an ace agent, and given Shen Fei's collaboration with Stark, S.H.I.E.L.D had already investigated Shen Fei's profile. Nick Fury is amazing. He's quickly considered S.H.I.E.L.D his family. After Natasha left, perhaps due to S.H.I.E.L.D regulations, Shirley didn't discuss her work at the agency much. However, Shen Fei could tell from her tone that she was very proud of being a S.H.I.E.L.D agent. Shirley was a kind person. Especially after learning about the events in Raccoon City, which were largely caused by her parents, she had always wanted to make amends for the damage they had caused the world. Working at S.H.I.E.L.D allowed her to fulfill that wish. Shen Fei couldn't say anything about this, so he could only tell Rebecca and Shirley to be careful. Natasha returned, and the four of them chatted in a lively atmosphere. Shen Fei held Natasha in high regard. Her sacrifice for the Soul Stone alone, if nothing else, worthy of everyone's respect. He seems interested in you, Natasha said as they departed after dinner, and Shirley and Natasha got into a car. Don't be ridiculous. We're just friends. He's just concerned about me, Shirley replied. Just friends? It's really hard to find someone you love forever in this line of work, Natasha said with a hint of emotion. The Secret Service profession has the highest divorce rate, due to its dangers and the infrequent absence of physical contact. Alright, let's go back and rest. Help me check what's in there. After sending Shirley to rest, Natasha went alone to a laboratory on the island and handed the wine she had vomited to a researcher. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Floating Island Incident, Part 2. BSA's research facility, Shen Fei finally had the opportunity to encounter the T-Virus. While analyzing it with machines, he also used the power of the surgery fruit to analyze it. Plant viruses. I really want to see the source of the T-Virus, the stairway to the sun. Although Shen Fei didn't know much about the T-Virus, he did know its origin, which was one of the reasons he came to the BSA. In some ways, the stairway to the sun was very similar to the heart grass. Both were plants, and both could enhance the human body. Shen Fei hadn't tried the heart grass until now, not only out of fear of Wakanda's technological advancement, but also because he wondered if it was effective for everyone. Shen Fei only remembered that it seemed only to be consumed by the royal family of Wakanda. No one else seemed to have tasted it. If heartgrass truly worked for everyone, it wouldn't make sense for it to be limited to the royal family. It could easily be used to cultivate a special ability army. And most importantly, if it truly worked for everyone, why didn't anyone from other tribes try it? It was unbelievable that such a powerful thing wouldn't be tempted by anyone. Wakanda's people are simple, but that doesn't mean they lack ambition. There must be some reason why those people didn't steal the heart-shaped grass. Shen Fei didn't know the specifics of the stairway to the sun, but judging by some of the T-Virus's characteristics, before a suitable serum was developed, relying on viral enhancement was purely a matter of luck. Wesker's success was due to his having been one of the survivors of the Spencer virus enhancement experiment. Shen Fei's ability to escape the T-Virus infection and gain enhanced abilities wasn't due to luck, but rather to the power of the oak fruit. The oak fruit's ability to extract the essence and discard the dross was why the T-Virus wasn't revealed in Shen Fei's system during his escape from Raccoon City during S.H.I.E.L.D's examination. Viruses can alter the human body's structure, and so can devil fruits. In a sense, devil fruits can be considered viruses. Shen Fei, who has been researching the oak fruit's abilities, was aware of this ability, but even so, he wouldn't just inject any virus into his system. He wasn't Wesker, and the potential for transformation into a monster for the sake of power wouldn't matter. As expected, movies like Resident Evil are completely illogical. Shen Fei's research on the T-Virus had taught him one thing: zombies can't exist for long. Without food, or energy, they can't survive for long. Zombies decay because their bodies are low on energy, relying solely on the energy of their own cells. Over time, they decay further and further until they are completely rotten and die. The length of time this takes varies from person to person. A Tyrant-level zombie could exist for a very long time. Analyzing the T-Virus? Wasn't it already analyzed a long time ago? Another researcher, Chad said as Shen Fei was analyzing the T-virus. Let's get familiar with it first, Shen Fei said. To others, the T-virus wasn't easy to analyze. A vaccine for the T-virus was already available, and they were analyzing other viruses. Even Umbrella Corporation had abandoned its T-virus research in favor of other, more evolved viruses. But to Shen Fei, the T-virus was paramount. To date, biological weapons, with the exception of parasites, are essentially derivatives of the T-virus. This is because only the T-virus can alter the structure of the human body. The human body possesses an inherent immune system that protects against most bacteria and viruses. This is essentially the reason why humans can consume a wide variety of organisms without being affected by them. However, the advent of the T-virus changed this dynamic. Marcus's leech virus was created by combining T-virus and leech genes. Although it never spread, Marcus was resurrected as a result. Perhaps it's not a resurrection, but rather the creation of a leech queen with Marcus's memories. Other biological weapons, such as the G-Virus, T-G-Virus, T-Veronica virus, and T-Abyss virus, are all derived from the T-Virus combined with other genes. This means that, if used effectively, it's possible to combine the G-Virus with certain organisms to imbue a person with the abilities of certain organisms without the side effects. This is a very difficult feat for ordinary scientists. The difficulty is evident in the case of the Umbrella Corporation, which has been researching biological viruses since its founding, yet has yet to achieve a fully successful one. So far, the only virus that has been successfully enhanced is the Veronica virus. Poor Spencer, obsessed with achieving immortality through a virus, even resorted to searching the world for children to experiment on, but he never imagined that Alexia would succeed right under his nose. Furthermore, even with a Veronica virus, it takes around 15 years for the body to fully adapt. Of course, Captain America's success isn't included in this calculation, as, to date, no one except Spencer and a few others understands the connection between the enhanced serum and the T-virus. While this might be difficult for others, it's not so difficult for Shen Fei, who possesses the operation fruit. Nature is filled with creatures with miraculous abilities. Look at Spider-Man, who acquired spider powers simply from a single bite. If other creatures were combined with humans, what amazing abilities would they possess? For example, chameleons. Perhaps humans could even achieve invisibility. Research life was dull, consisting of recording data every day. Jill and Chris were rarely seen on the island. They were usually on the front lines, a fact Shen Fei particularly admired. The BSA's task force members also held them in higher regard. Even though Chris's team suffered the heaviest casualties, scores of them still wanted to team up with him. To these people, Chris was a legend. Shirley hadn't seen him since that encounter. S.H.I.E.L.D was incredibly busy. However, Shen Fei and Rebecca often saw each other. Sharing the same island and being both biochemical experts, they had plenty to talk about. Something seems to have gone wrong. Shen Fei, conducting routine research that day, heard a commotion outside. Curious, he went outside to investigate and discovered the discovery of a new biological weapon, a white monster. Every time a new biological weapon is discovered, BSA suffers the heaviest casualties, as there's no vaccine. It looks like fish DNA. As the others donned protective gear and approached the white monster, Shen Fei had already used the Operation Fruit to roughly analyze the characteristics of the new biovirus. A combination of the T-virus and marine life, it was the T-Abyss virus. Many people have been injured. We must develop a vaccine quickly, under the assignment of the Chief Research Institute. All researchers were assigned relevant tasks, including Shen Fei. A vaccine for the T-virus had already been developed, and all members of the task force were vaccinated before the operation. The vaccine rendered the T-virus less lethal. However, because the T-virus is a plant virus, the vaccine only delays the onset of the T-virus variant, providing no immunity. Chris has been infected. Besides the new biochemical virus, Shen Fei also heard another piece of news. Chris had been in trouble. The constant accidents involving the team members were putting immense pressure on Chris. Chris's continued survival wasn't just due to his prowess and his protagonist aura, but also because his teammates constantly rescued him when he was in danger. It was thanks to Jill's constant support and the surviving nemesis, Wesker. Otherwise, Chris would have collapsed long ago, as he did in the original novel. It seems I'm the only one left. A vaccine for a virus, especially a new one, was impossible to develop quickly, and many researchers at the institute expressed sympathy for Chris. Shen Fei, what are you doing? Hurry up and bring me the analysis results. Generally, Chinese people living abroad adopt foreign names, like Melinda and Ada Wang. Shen Fei's name is actually quite difficult to pronounce abroad. Fei Shen, according to foreign custom, is the correct pronunciation. However, thanks to the globalization of the world and the export of Chinese culture and cuisine, Chinese names are rarely pronounced the same way these days. I'm busy, don't bother me, Shen Fei said, pushing aside several researchers and occupying several instruments by himself. The operation fruit, while powerful, works much faster when combined with instruments. Prepare the potions for me, quick. Do you want Chris and the others to die? At Shen Fei's command, the researchers quickly brought him the necessary medicines. Done, Shen Fei quickly prepared the vaccine, and without paying attention to the others, he left the research institute with a vaccine and headed for a nearby hospital. Inside Chris's hospital room, lying on the bed, Chris showed no fear, and even a hint of relief. Jill, on the other hand, seemed to have tears welling up in her eyes. This is a vaccine for the new virus. I just made it and it hasn't been tested yet. Time was urgent, so Shen Fei went straight to Chris and took out a metal syringe. This, Jill hesitated immediately. Come on, Chris said without hesitation. Captain, this is too dangerous. Let's let others try it. The other team members of Chris who came in with Shen Fei said so. Is my life more important than theirs? Under Chris's scolding, all the team members immediately fell silent. Don't worry, I am very confident about this. Nonsense, how could he not be confident? This was prepared with a surgery fruit. Chris's infection with the virus this time was also an opportunity for Shen Fei to show off. Otherwise, he didn't know how long he would have to work as an ordinary researcher. After all, he was too young. Chapter 29, Floating Island Incident, Part 2. It's working, the doctor who arrived shortly after examining Chris exclaimed in astonishment. This hospital wasn't just any ordinary one, but a UN-run facility specializing in bio-infectious diseases. Patients infected with the bio-infectious diseases from around the world were sent there. Then get the vaccine ready, Chris said hurriedly upon hearing the doctor's words. Well, the results so far are good, but we don't know if there will be any side effects yet. It's best to observe them, the doctor said hesitantly. People died while we were observing them. At Chris and Jill's insistence, the vaccine was finally administered to all those infected. As Chris had said, they were dying, so why worry about side effects? If there were any side effects, they would still be under observation after the vaccination. Therefore, to avoid any potential side effects, Chris and his teammates wouldn't be able to go to the front lines anytime soon. Thank you, Jill said, looking at Shen Fei with gratitude. You're welcome. I'm here to do this. Without you fighting so hard on the front lines, we wouldn't be able to do research so comfortably in the rear, Shen Fei said. After Jill expressed her gratitude again, she hurried off. After all, the emergence of a new biochemical virus wasn't a good thing for the BSAA and FBC. What did you say? A virus vaccine has appeared. The rapid appearance of the new virus vaccine shocked all the biochemical experts on the island. It was so fast. I got Jill's message. Thanks to you this time, Rebecca quickly contacted Shen Fei. After learning that Chris was infected with a virus, Rebecca had been staying in the lab conducting research, hoping to save the infected Chris. How did you do it? Rebecca asked the biggest question in her mind. I just discovered the structure of the virus and got lucky, Shen Fei outlined his idea. It sounded simple, but it was extremely difficult to achieve. It required constant trial and error. The reason Shen Fei was so fast was because his Operation Fruit allowed him to skip those attempts. The T-Abyss virus held no value to Shen Fei. It was simply a biological virus. It was strange to say the same thing. Umbrella's T, G, Veronica, and Ouroboros viruses were all initially developed for self-improvement, creating new humans, according to the company. Later viruses became purely biological weapons. At some point, biological virus research strayed from its original focus. In this respect, Umbrella's goals were far more noble than theirs. It was truly a profound irony. Damn it. How is this possible? Somewhere on Terragrigia Island, a leader-like figure, upon hearing the news of the vaccine, angrily threw a military dagger to the side. The dagger sank into the wall. Are we still going ahead with the plan? One of his men asked. I'll think about it, the leader said, dismissing his men from the room and immediately contacting someone on his cell phone. Did you say there's no vaccine? What's going on now? It's just a small incident. We have no choice but to act early. We'll start tomorrow night. I'll cooperate, the person on the phone said. This is too hasty. My people aren't ready yet, we have to act tomorrow night, the person on the phone emphasized again. Since you say so, it's not impossible, but I'll triple the price this time, no problem. Hello, Mr. Shen, our boss wants to see you. Please come in. The next night, Shen Fei, who was alone in his room watching a movie, was suddenly greeted by 4 heavily armed uninvited guests. I don't think I know your boss, Shen Fei said, holding his hands up as he was pointed at gunpoint. You'll know him when you get there, the leader-like figure waved to the man standing behind Shen Fei. The man then immediately produced a syringe and approached Shen Fei. This trouble has come too quickly. Just as Shen Fei was about to take action, an undetectable gunshot rang out in the room. Then, a bloody hole appeared in the head of the man behind Shen Fei, and he collapsed. Only after this man fell did the other 3 react, but it was too late. 3 muffled thuds echoed, and they too fell. I didn't expect you to be so popular. Then, from a nearby room, someone unexpectedly appeared, Ada Wang. She was clutching a silenced pistol. It was she who had just killed the 4 men. Your work is truly remarkable, Shen Fei said with a smile after a pause. Your reaction was beyond my expectations, too. Shen Fei's attitude made Ada worry, and she immediately pointed her gun at him. Are you, like them, inviting me to see some boss? Shen Fei seemed unfazed by Ada's actions. Yes, please, Ada nodded gently. But what if I don't want to leave? Since your boss wants to see me, let him come in person. Do you really think I can't shoot? Ada said, and the muzzle of the gun began to move, seemingly aiming for a non-vital spot. Of course you will, but, Shen Fei said, flicking his right index finger upward. Ada's twin guns immediately flew upward. To Shen Fei's surprise, he had intended to seize Ada's guns with this move, but she was also carried aloft. The next moment, Ada let go of her guns and fell to the ground. As she landed, she pulled another gun from her waist. Just as she was about to fire, she felt the gun snap in two, as if slashed by a sharp blade. Don't do it again, or I'll be rude, Shen Fei, a scalpel in his left hand, said immediately when he saw Ada was about to attack. Even when the 4 men were pointing guns at him, Shen Fei had activated the power of the Operation Fruit and noticed the presence of another person in the room. That's why he didn't use the Operation Fruit to kill them directly. What Shen Fei didn't expect was that the extra person was actually King Ada. It was the baton that sent Ada's guns flying. Superpowered people, Ada looked at Shen Fei in surprise. While there were no mutants in this world, there were many people with superpowers. Some were due to radiation and other factors, while the rest were just inhumans. That's about right, Shen Fei said, and with a flick of his right hand, the broken gun in Ada's hand, along with the 2 guns in the air, flew towards him. It seems my luck is really bad today. Ada had dealt with superpowered people before, but those powers couldn't compare to the power displayed by Shen Fei. I think I'm lucky. Have a seat, Shen Fei said, walking to a sofa and sitting down, then motioning Ada to sit across from him. What do you want to do with me? Ada said, sitting obediently across from Shen Fei. Don't worry, I won't do anything to you. I've been needing someone to help with something, and I was wondering if you'd be interested. You want to hire me? Yes, Shen Fei said with a smile. At this point, it seems I can't refuse, Ada said, as if giving him the order. Of course not. As long as you promise to keep my abilities a secret. You can leave at any time. Shen Fei raised his hand and pointed at the door, his face calm. You believe me? Ada asked. Of course, Shen Fei smiled and nodded. Then I agree. Ada stood up and walked towards the door, observing Shen Fei's reaction as she walked. Shen Fei didn't react at all until she was out. It seems Wesker has set his sights on me. That's understandable. If you want to study viruses, you need biochemical experts. Many experts in this field have disappeared in recent years. Where these experts have gone is easy to guess. I hope Wesker will come to me in person later. Red Queen. The only things Umbrella Corporation wants for Shen Fei now are the Stairs of the Sun and Red Queen. As long as he finds Wesker, he should be able to obtain both. I wonder who these 4 are. Looking at the 4 bodies on the ground, Shen Fei immediately opened a small mirror space and contained the 4 bodies, destroying them easily and conveniently. What happened there? Is there a fire? After cleaning up the blood, Shen Fei looked out the window and saw what looked like a raging fire in the city in the distance, much to his surprise. But then the siren blazed, instantly revealing what had happened. It was a biovirus alarm, a new alarm system established after the Raccoon City incident. Normally, it wouldn't sound, but now, it signaled that the entire city was unsafe. Is this a repeat of the Raccoon City incident? What is S.H.I.E.L.D doing? Just as Shen Fei was complaining about S.H.I.E.L.D, Jill arrived with the action team, ready to escort the biochemical experts residing there. From Jill's words, Shen Fei realized that the situation had spiraled out of control. The city was a chaotic mess, with viruses, hunters, and panic. To be able to send so many hunters here, it seems Hydra has taken action. FBC was S.H.I.E.L.D territory, and for someone to succeed under such circumstances, only Hydra, hidden within S.H.I.E.L.D, could have pulled it off. When it comes to things in the Marvel world, if you can't find the head, you can never go wrong by looking for Hydra. Chapter 30 Floating Island Incident, and boom. The retreating convoy was attacked shortly after setting off. It wasn't a biological weapons attack, but a human one, resulting in heavy casualties. Be careful, Jill instructed the others to retreat with the biological experts while he led his men in a counterattack. Having fought on the front lines of biological warfare for years, the BSAA's action team was a rare elite, and they quickly dispatched the attackers. Those bastards from Greyhound. Upon seeing the bodies of the attackers, Jill and the others' faces were filled with anger. Greyhound was a bioterrorism organization and a long-time rival of the BSAA. Rebecca, are you okay? Shen Fei was calling Rebecca. Unlike Shen Fei's research institute, which was located on Terragrigia Island, far from the city, Rebecca's was within the city. The difference was that Shen Fei's institute housed various biological weapons samples, all seized by the BSAA. Such a facility would be too dangerous within the city, while Rebecca's was only analyzing viruses. With adequate defenses, even within the city, there was no danger. I'm fine. How are you doing? We're evacuating. Rebecca had barely finished her words when several gunshots rang out on the line, and then the call was disconnected. Rebecca, someone's really looking for death. Shen Fei immediately found Jill and explained what had happened. I understand. I'll notify Chris immediately, Jill said, and began to contact Chris. With such a chaotic situation, Chris and the others' isolation was naturally over. I'd better go and take a look myself, Shen Fei said, and started to pick up the Greyhound's weapons on the ground, but Jill immediately stopped him. Jill then told Shen Fei that it was best not to pick up terrorist weapons casually, just like picking up enemy weapons on the battlefield. Shen Fei had always been puzzled by the fact that in many foreign movies he'd watched, the protagonists never picked up the enemy's weapons after killing them. Now he finally understood why they did this, for safety. Terrorists are desperate men, and there's no guarantee they won't be clutching a pulled grenade or having explosives strapped to their bodies before they die. Although such incidents occurred only a handful of times, each one resulted in additional casualties. Chris is already there. Don't worry, Rebecca will be fine. I understand, Shen Fei said when he realized Jill wouldn't let him go alone. Of course, this was just a delaying tactic. Even if Chris arrived now, it would be too late. Moreover, the city was teeming with biochemical monsters, and it would take considerable time to defeat them. But this wasn't a problem for Shen Fei. While Jill was comforting the others, Shen Fei loaded his suitcase into a car and drove off. On the way, Shen Fei donned the ring and, on a deserted road, activated the mirrored space. He immediately stopped the car and pulled a small cabinet from the trunk. He placed it on the ground, and the cabinet instantly expanded. Opening it revealed a variety of weapons. PIM particles have the property of shrinking any confined space, so simply applying PIM particles to the cabinet wouldn't require applying them to all the guns. Magic combined with modern technology is the way to go, Shen Fei sighed as he pulled out the weapons. He glanced at the Ant-Man suit and Ant-Man's darts, then thought for a moment before deciding not to use them. They were too sensitive, so it was best not to use them. After putting his belongings away, Shen Fei shrank the suitcase to the size of a figurine and hung it around his waist. The PIM particles could be adjusted in size. If he hadn't been afraid of being exposed, he wouldn't have even brought the suitcase. As for the car he was driving, Shen Fei simply tossed it into the mirror dimension. How tragic. Appearing directly on the street next to Rebecca's lab, Shen Fei sighed helplessly as he listened to the incessant gunfire, roars, and cries in the distance. It was just like Raccoon City back then, except that Shen Fei had been struggling to survive, while now he could watch from the sidelines. Shen Fei had no intention of rescuing those people. Iron Man or Spider-Man would have fought tooth and nail, stranger or not. But if Rebecca hadn't been in trouble, he'd likely have been on the departing ship with Jill and the others, observing the whole thing with aloof eyes. Looks like she's gone. In the mirror dimension, Shen Fei arrived at Rebecca's lab, only to find fallen guards and the bodies of several researchers. So many precious instruments. As expected of S.H.I.E.L.D, with all their wealth and power, Shen Fei sighed as he surveyed the lab's state-of-the-art equipment. If the timing hadn't been inconvenient, Shen Fei would have wanted to move all the equipment away. Finding Rebecca was paramount right now. No matter how important the equipment was, it couldn't compare to Rebecca's life. It looks like there's a problem with the military too, otherwise they wouldn't have been deployed yet. A military garrison was stationed on the far right side of Terragrigia Island, a presence that had existed since the island was built. After we rescue Rebecca, maybe we can get a few tanks. Shen Fei had always coveted Dr. Hank's tank keychain, but because tanks were so difficult to obtain, he had never had the chance. Found it, Shen Fei soon found Rebecca on the rooftop of a building, along with a group of about 50 heavily armed men, who were escorting a group of scientists to a helicopter for their departure. It must be said that the mirror dimension was incredibly powerful. If Shen Fei had searched for Rebecca in real space, it would have been extremely difficult, given the city's infestation of monsters. Shen Fei had only been able to spot these people because they were attracted by the sound of gunfire. This is a bit troublesome. Looking at the 50 heavily armed men standing around him from the mirror dimension, Shen Fei fell silent. Under these circumstances, rescuing Rebecca without exposing his abilities was incredibly difficult. There's no other way. Realizing he couldn't hesitate any longer, Shen Fei acted immediately, leaving the mirror dimension and descending directly to the floor below where Rebecca stood, where he began to use the power of the Operation Fruit. Room, slaughterhouse, a hemispherical enclosed space unfolded, surrounding Rebecca and the people guarding her above. Then, he immediately took out 3 grenades, pulled out the pull rings, and then exchanged positions with the grenades and Rebecca. The sudden change of position surprised Rebecca, but Shen Fei had no intention of explaining now, and immediately pulled Rebecca to the side to hide. Boom! The next moment, a huge explosion sounded above, and a hole about 3 meters long was directly blown open in the ceiling. The explosion immediately alarmed the people above, as well as those guarding the stairs. We can't let them leave. They took away a lot of viruses. After seeing that it was Shen Fei, Rebecca didn't bother to ask what happened before, and said directly, "I know." As Shen Fei spoke, he handed the other gun on his leg to Rebecca. "Hide well." After giving the instructions, Shen Fei immediately rushed out, holding the Desert Eagle in both hands and firing at the same time. With his current physical condition, even without using the power of the fruit and magic, it is not impossible for him to kill the 50 people above. If it were not for saving Rebecca, he would not need to use his power at all. Bang, bang, bang. As always, headshots. With the power of the Desert Eagle, even if these people were wearing bulletproof helmets, it would be useless. At this moment, even Yan Shuangfei was child's play in front of him. In a moment, the enemies rushing down the stairs and jumping out of the cave were all dealt with. Bang, bang, bang. But just when Shen Fei wanted to rush to the rooftop, he was suppressed by the firepower of the people above. I always thought that there was something wrong with Captain America's fighting style. Now it seems that my idea is wrong. If I had a Captain America shield right now, it would be great. The firepower from above was so strong that Shen Fei couldn't help but think of Captain America's shield, which had absolutely first-class bulletproof ability. "Do you really think I have no power over you?" Shen Fei said, hurling grenades upwards with all his might. After several grenades, the firepower finally weakened. However, once Shen Fei attacked and eliminated the intruders, he realized it was too late. The helicopters had already taken away many of the scientists, and those who remained were also shot. As for the boxes containing the virus, none were found. They must have all been taken away. Standing over the body of a familiar figure, Rebecca's expression was deeply saddened. However, as a former STARS elite who had experienced the training center, the mansion, and the changes in Raccoon City, she quickly regained her composure. After all, the current situation was very similar to Raccoon City. "Who are they?" Shen Fei asked. "I don't know," But they seem to be after the virus and those experts, Rebecca said. Since the BSAA and FBC have numerous research facilities here, it stands to reason that almost all viruses can be found here. Let S.H.I.E.L.D. investigate this later. Let's get out of here first, Shen Fei said, pulling out his phone and calling Jill. Under Jill's guidance, the two prepared to reunite with Chris and the others. Asshole, watching the video of someone claiming to be the leader of the Greyhounds, the BSA, the FBC, and even a certain black, one-eyed figure at Trident headquarters in Washington, D.C., practically uttered the curse word in unison. Unlike the Raccoon City incident, where the truth had been hidden until now, this time, the Greyhounds directly issued a statement of responsibility. One of the benefits of being in the United States is being able to directly witness a terrorist claim responsibility on television. This sparked a debate over whether to use nuclear weapons to destroy Terra Grigia. The U.S. military strongly opposed this, rejecting not only nuclear weapons but also the use of solar matrix satellites, including suggestions from UN official Morgan. Although Terra Grigia wasn't a U.S. territory, its military presence was American. With the military's strong opposition, coupled with their pledge to send troops to eliminate all monsters on Terra Grigia and their actions already underway, no one advocated for its complete destruction. However, the military's attitude aroused the suspicion of S.H.I.E.L.D's Black Cyclops. It was just an artificial island, and he had no idea the military was making such a big move. There must be some unknown reason behind it. How could there be such a thing? Are you kidding me? Shen Fei, who had sneaked into the military base to retrieve something, was stunned when he saw the situation at the military base. Chapter 31 Abnormal Points, Part 1. Forget about Umbrella Corporation, but there's even this thing. This world is getting more and more interesting. Shen Fei gave a helpless, wry smile as he gazed at the enormous circle of light ahead, roughly 10 meters in diameter, resembling countless shimmering, crystal-clear pieces of glass, and constantly shimmering with a strange light. Although it was his first time seeing it, Shen Fei recognized it. An anomaly, the anomaly of an ancient invasion. If it were just the circle of light, he couldn't confirm it, but if he added the dinosaurs imprisoned in the underground base below, it was certain. So, that's probably how Umbrella's zombie dinosaurs came from. When zombie dinosaurs appeared in Raccoon City, Shen Fei initially believed they were genetically engineered by Umbrella Corporation, but the appearance of the anomaly revealed that he might be mistaken. Remember, an anomaly is a gateway to another world. Judging by the military base here, this anomaly must have existed for a long time. Perhaps this base, or even the entire island, was built for this very reason. The more Shen Fei thought about it, the more he felt his hypothesis made sense. It's impossible for an artificial island to be built here for no reason. After a moment's thought, Shen Fei walked directly to the anomaly, unleashing the power of the Operation Fruit and simultaneously using his magic. Half an hour later, Shen Fei retracted the power of the Operation Fruit and clasped his hands together. A massive, three-dimensional golden magic circle appeared directly around the anomaly, encircling it. As the golden magic circle shrank, the anomaly also slowly shrank, until both vanished simultaneously. Such a troublesome thing, we can't let it exist. Just as Shen Fei was muttering to himself, he suddenly felt the surroundings shift. Shen Fei immediately moved his feet and quickly dodged to the side. Immediately, he spotted a figure dressed in a yellow Taoist robe, even his head covered by a yellow hood, appearing near his previous position. Supreme Mage, Shen Fei said respectfully, placing one hand over his chest. While Shen Fei appeared calm on the surface, his mind was actually pounding. He had no idea why Ancient One had appeared. Over the years, he had used portals and mirror magic, though not often, but not infrequently, and seemingly for nefarious purposes. Shen Fei feared that the Ancient One was coming to reclaim his ring. Having studied on Kamar-Taj, Shen Fei knew full well that using magic on Earth without being detected by the Ancient One was impossible. The magical barrier of the three great temples covered the entire planet. This barrier served as a defense against invading dimensional monsters, but it also monitored the magical forces on Earth. It was practically impossible for the Ancient One to conceal any magical fluctuations anywhere on Earth if she so desired. Of course, under normal circumstances, the Ancient One would not care about such matters, just as a nation's supreme leader wouldn't dwell on a crime in a village. If that were the case, the Ancient One would likely be utterly busy. That was why Shen Fei dared to use portals and mirror dimensions. Do you know what that is? The Ancient One approached Shen Fei and whispered. Although the Ancient One didn't say anything specific, Shen Fei understood what he meant. It's like a portal, like it leads to another world. Shen Fei couldn't claim to know anything about the anomaly, but he could explain its nature. For the mages of Kamar-Taj, skilled at opening portals, analyzing its nature with magical power was no difficult task. Take a look at this, Shen Fei said, as Ancient One suddenly produced a magic book and handed it to him. This, Shen Fei was taken aback by the name on the book. After a moment's silence, he finally accepted it. The Book of Cagliostro was the name of the book, and it was the only magic book Shen Fei hadn't read in Kamar-Taj. Knowing he would eventually leave Kamar-Taj, Shen Fei not only read a lot of magic books during that time, but also copied many of them onto his computer, intending to study them later. In particular, Shen Fei memorized some of the spells he would later use in strange mode, such as the Form of Archaon and the Scarlet Necklace of Satorak. After all, he didn't have Strange's photographic memory. The Ancient One didn't stop him. In fact, many of the Ancient One's grimoires were available online, such as the Key of Solomon, the Great Grimoire, and the Dictionary of Hell. However, he had never touched the Book of Cagliostro, a book about time. The grimoires of Kamar-Taj were locked in chains to prevent access to the library. Don't underestimate those chains, they were enchanted by the Ancient One. If the Ancient One didn't want anyone to see a grimoire, it couldn't be removed. This further convinced Shen Fei that the Ancient One's death was intentional. Otherwise, Caecilius's quest to retrieve the ritual magic circle that summoned dark forces from the Book of Cagliostro would be impossible. Seeing that the Ancient One didn't react, Shen Fei immediately began to read the Book of Cagliostro, having always been deeply curious about it. Caecilius's desire to save his wife didn't require such a hassle. He could simply use the time stone to travel back in time, but he didn't. This, turning to the middle of the Book of Cagliostro and noticing the two pages stuck together, Shen Fei immediately understood that the Ancient One didn't want him to see the dark summoning ritual. After a pause, Shen Fei continued flipping through. Isn't he stealing Dr. Strange's work? The Book of Cagliostro wasn't very thick, and with the Ancient One not pushing him much, after finishing, Shen Fei closed his eyes and began to reflect. It was impossible for Shen Fei not to covet the Time Stone. After all, it was one of the 6 Infinity Stones. However, considering the magic behind the Infinity Stones, even if he coveted it, he had to give up. Thank you, Sorcerer Supreme. The Book of Cagliostro was truly powerful. Even after just reading it, Shen Fei felt he had a deeper understanding of Kamar-Taj's magic. You're welcome. Just shut it down the next time you encounter something like this, the Ancient One said, immediately disabling the mirror dimension and disappearing. This is time. After the Ancient One vanished, Shen Fei sighed, looking at his barely moving watch. As expected of the Ancient One, even without the Eye of Agamotto, he could still manipulate time. He'd wasted a considerable amount of time in the mirror dimension just to read the Book of Cagliostro. That's nothing. When the Ancient One died, it seemed like all of New York had stopped. The Book of Cagliostro's greatest benefit to Shen Fei wasn't the knowledge of time magic. For Shen Fei now, knowing time magic was practically useless because he couldn't use it. To use time magic, one of 2 conditions was required. One was the Eye of Agamotto, the easiest. With it, time could be manipulated at will. The other was the Ancient One's unparalleled strength, capable of wielding immense power to propel time magic. Of course, the time magic activated in this way was incomparable to the Eye of Agamotto. That's one more task. Thankfully, the Ancient One only said to close it upon encountering it, and didn't ask me to search the world for such anomalies to close. After reading the Book of Cagliostro, Shen Fei finally understood why the Ancient One had asked him to read it. The anomaly was caused by the Eye of Agamotto, or more precisely, the Time Stone. Time cannot be manipulated. This was the main reason the Ancient One didn't use the Time Stone to save Caecilius's wife. Generally speaking, dimensions have their own restorative properties. Ordinary uses, like the time magic within the Book of Cagliostro, such as the time freeze the Ancient One just used, will naturally recover with the passage of time. But the Eye of Agamotto is different. It's the Time Stone, and each Infinity Stone possesses infinite energy. Currently, on Earth, only the Ancient One and Shen Fei are capable of closing anomalies. There are many mages on Kamar-Taj, but unfortunately, they are too weak to do so. Shen Fei's ability to close anomalies isn't due to his immense magical prowess, but rather to his combined power of the Operation Fruit and his magical prowess. Let's take it one step at a time. The impact of the anomalies won't be that significant anyway. There's not much mention of them in the news, which shows the government's efficiency. Most anomalies appear very briefly, likely disappearing before anyone notices them. And the vast majority appear over the ocean, given that Earth is mostly ocean. With this in mind, Shen Fei began scavenging military bases, tanks, helicopters, fighter jets, armored vehicles, missiles, various firearms, and ammunition, including various research instruments. Because there were so many items, and after running out of PIM particles, Shen Fei regretfully had to stop. P.S. Sorry, my computer crashed, and everything is gone. I'm vomiting blood. Chapter 32 Abnormal Point, Part 2. Looks like I don't have to be sneaky anymore. Shen Fei quietly returned to his private room on the ship. As he stepped onto the deck, he felt a significant sense of relief. Right now on Earth, the person he feared most was the Ancient One. Apart from the Ancient One, no one on Earth could rival him at this stage, not even Mordo and Wang, who had trained for many more years. Magic is magical, but so is science. For example, the PIM particles are, in a sense, magic. The army is dispatching. Hearing the roar from above, Shen Fei looked up and immediately understood what was going on. Fighter jets and over a dozen helicopters were heading towards Terra Grigia. It seems they're not planning to nuke the entire island, but rather that anomaly, as Shen Fei had anticipated. Knowing there was a persistent anomaly on the island, the higher-ups' goal became to regain control of the island. According to the scientists involved in the ancient invasion, an anomaly is Earth from a past time period. Unauthorized alteration of events there would affect humanity's future. Therefore, the best solution for any creatures that appeared within the anomaly was to send them back. Unfortunately, this is just one scientist's opinion. For most people in power, the appearance of anomalies represents enormous benefits, while anomalies whose disappearance is uncertain are of little concern. These potentially permanent anomalies contain untapped resources. As for their impact on the present and future, let alone the fact that I haven't seen them, even if I did, as long as they didn't affect me, it wouldn't matter. Humans are a species that can cooperate sincerely in the face of a major disaster, but they are also a species that will still slaughter each other in the face of a major disaster. Just like in Avengers 4, Days of Future Past, when the superheroes saved half of the people who had died previously, not everyone was grateful to the superheroes. These people were largely those who survived the snap. I wonder what these people will think when they see the anomaly disappear, thinking of their reactions after a bloody battle to reach the military base and discovering the anomaly has vanished. Shen Fei's face lit up with a hint of gloating. It's just a pity for this island. If the anomaly still existed on the island and a military presence was maintained, Terra Grigia might have a chance to prosper again over time. But without the anomaly, the military certainly wouldn't be stationed there. Presumably, then, not many people would want to live in a city plagued by a biohazard. Are you okay? Shen Fei asked, looking at Rebecca, who had just woken up and walked onto the deck, her face still pale. Although Rebecca hadn't taken any action previously, experiencing the events of Raccoon City again had awakened her memories of the past. I hope Chris and Jill are okay, Rebecca said worriedly, looking in the direction of Terra Grigia. Chris and Jill hadn't evacuated, but continued to eliminate monsters on the island. Don't worry too much. I just saw the military dispatched. They'll be fine, Shen Fei said. This incident wasn't like Raccoon City. They could hide there, but not this time. You're a mutant, Rebecca whispered after carefully observing her surroundings and finding no one else around. For Rebecca, who worked at S.H.I.E.L.D, superpowers weren't new to her. S.H.I.E.L.D had a collection of such individuals stored in its cold storage. In the Marvel Universe, there are many such characters, primarily from the inhuman race, various radiation-induced mutations, congenital anomalies, and so on. As a S.H.I.E.L.D biochemical expert, Rebecca has been tasked with researching these. S.H.I.E.L.D maintains a list of mutants, officially called metahumans. S.H.I.E.L.D has its own process for determining whether these metahumans are harmful or harmless. Harmful ones are placed in cold storage, while harmless ones are placed under house arrest and sometimes required to report regularly to S.H.I.E.L.D branch. This policy is based on the fact that virtually no metahumans who have surfaced are harmless. With a modicum of power, it's common for them to act arbitrarily. Rebecca's caution stems from this concern, as well as the fact that as an S.H.I.E.L.D agent, She has a duty to report any metahuman she discovers. I'm not a mutant. I used magic before, Shen Fei said, completely baffled. Magic? You're a magician. It took a long moment for Rebecca to react. To be more precise, it's a mage, Shen Fei said with a smile, waving his right index finger. How do I know if what you're saying is true? Rebecca said after another moment of silence. Not here, Shen Fei said, motioning for Rebecca to follow him out to his previous room. Watch this, Shen Fei said, clasping his hands together. A golden beam of light appeared before him, slowly unfolding into a shield. Bang, bang, bang. Shocked, Rebecca tapped the shield gently, confirming it was real. If the shield was real, then the mage Shen Fei had just described must also be real. This isn't scientific, Rebecca, a scientist, said, echoing the sentiments of most scientists upon encountering magic for the first time. Magic is just undiscovered science, Shen Fei quoted a famous science fiction writer. I might need to report this to the higher-ups, Rebecca said, somewhat hesitantly, while also explaining S.H.I.E.L.D's regulations regarding superpowers. Shen Fei was willing to expose his abilities to save her, but she wanted to report them, which seemed like a betrayal. Go ahead and report. Don't worry, I'm fine. Don't forget, I'm no ordinary person now, Shen Fei said with a smile. Shen Fei had anticipated the current situation long before he took action, and had prepared a statement. While revealing it now was a bit premature for him, it wasn't unacceptable. In this world, advancement is impossible without contact with S.H.I.E.L.D. Only through contact with S.H.I.E.L.D. can one gain access to more, such as for the future Avengers. Having an official identity is crucial. Without it, communicating with them is a hassle, let alone reaching Asgard. If Shen Fei wanted to further his magic, Asgard's magic system was a good option. We've found them. Natasha and Shirley swiftly descended from a Quinjet, rappelling down a rope onto the luxurious Queen Ferry on the sea below. This ship was the base of the terrorist organization Greyhound. Something's not right. Be careful. Noticing no one had emerged from the cabin despite all the commotion, Natasha immediately sensed something was amiss and cautiously warned Shirley. Then, carrying the various weapons dropped from the Quinjet, the two of them entered the cabin. Meanwhile, at the military base, biological and chemical weapons proved once again no match for modern weapons. After a bombing raid and a sweep by over a dozen helicopters, the base was quickly recaptured. What did you say? Seeing the surveillance cameras empty where the anomaly had been located, the military brass practically smashed their intercoms in anger. Such a huge waste of manpower and resources, all for nothing, was too much to bear, even for a general. Especially with S.H.I.E.L.D. watching from behind. According to the original responsibilities of S.H.I.E.L.D., anomalies were their responsibility. Of course, regulations were just regulations. In reality, unless anomalies appeared in various countries and were already exposed, no one would report them to S.H.I.E.L.D. Unfortunately, even though he was unwilling to accept this, he could only now accept his bad luck. According to the previous research report on the anomaly, it had automatically shut down. I can take a good rest for a while. The Terra Grigia incident shocked the world, and Shen Fei's internship was naturally interrupted. The incident was, of course, publicly announced as a terrorist attack, but according to the intelligence Shen Fei received from Rebecca, Jill, and the others, it was a coordinated operation by high-level officials within the FBC. The reason was simple. In Eastern parlance, it's called nurturing an enemy for self-preservation. S.H.I.E.L.D. is overseen by the World Security Council, and the newly formed FBC isn't entirely comprised of S.H.I.E.L.D. The United Nations sent a senior official. Before the Raccoon City incident, the Biohazard Defense Department wasn't highly regarded. After all, biohazard attacks are so rare, so naturally, they don't have the same power and funding as other departments. Much like a country launching a war only to find laundry detergent, many biohazard incidents are actually deliberate exaggerations. However, after the Raccoon City incident, the Biohazard Defense Department's power and funding skyrocketed. To further enhance their power, someone orchestrated this operation. Of course, if it were a completely biochemical crisis world, there would be no problem with this, but in the Marvel world, this person is actually just being used by someone with ulterior motives, and is just a shield that is pushed out in the open. Hello. When Shen Fei walked into his room, an unfamiliar voice made Shen Fei immediately alert. After seeing who was speaking, Shen Fei couldn't help but laugh in his heart. At first, she thought it was someone from S.H.I.E.L.D, but after seeing who it was, he knew it wasn't. A man in a handsome and well-fitting black suit, wearing a pair of sunglasses, sitting leisurely on the sofa, was Wesker. Standing behind him was Ada Wong. Judging from the bandage on Ada Wong's face, she seemed to be injured. Chapter 33 Abnormal Points, Part 2. What a rare guest. Are you her boss? After being stunned for a moment, Shen Fei immediately put down the suitcase in his hand. Wesker's appearance so quickly was beyond his expectation. Whoosh! Just when Shen Fei wanted to say something else, Wesker, who was sitting on the sofa, suddenly appeared in front of him, and grabbed his neck with his right hand. The speed was so fast that most people would not be able to react at all. Bang, bang, bang. But unfortunately, Shen Fei was not an ordinary person. He immediately punched Wesker's palm, and then the two of them fought quickly. In a short moment, the two fists collided dozens of times. In the end, each of them punched the other's shoulder, forcing the two to step back involuntarily. Wesker took 4 steps back and used his palm to support the sofa behind him to stabilize his body, but the sofa also cracked under his tight grip. Shen Fei collided directly with the wall with a thud, causing it to tremble before stopping. As Wesker stared at Shen Fei in shock, he clasped his hands together, and suddenly, countless shattered pieces of glass appeared in the air, extending outward in all directions. This sudden change prevented the cautious Wesker from attacking again. Instead, he carefully observed his surroundings. Seeing nothing had changed, he fixed his gaze on Shen Fei again. As expected of Wesker, Chris Gill has incredible luck, Shen Fei thought, feeling the pain in his shoulder. The real world wasn't a game. With Wesker's speed just now, Chris wouldn't have had any chance to fight back. It's safe to say that Wesker wouldn't have needed a gun to kill Chris and the others, he could have just used a knife. Interesting. No wonder she failed. You've developed a strengthening serum. Wesker, for once, removed his sunglasses, revealing his red eyes. The moment he dropped his sunglasses, he charged at Shen Fei again. HMPH, Shen Fei sneered at the oncoming Wesker. He raised his right hand, and instantly the sofa, wall, and floor in front of him began to deform, forming a wall that blocked Wesker's path. Bang! Then, the wall shattered into countless shards of glass, scattering through the air. Wesker shattered it with a single punch. Objects in the mirrored space weren't real, but mirror images. The surrounding walls, like the walls, were indestructible. After all, they were a mirror image of an entire world. However, the mirror controlled by Shen Fei wasn't so solid. Don't be so anxious. Wait a moment, Shen Fei said. With a wave of his hands, the surrounding walls suddenly began to spin like countless gears, transforming the once cramped living room into a space resembling a training hall. This scene stunned Wesker and Ada, who immediately realized something was amiss. Through this room, they could see the outside world, as if the walls had become mirrors. Even more bizarre, the people around them seemed oblivious to them, each going their own way. My turn. Wesker was still a little panicked, as it was his first time seeing such a situation. But Shen Fei didn't care and immediately launched his attack. Originally, Shen Fei could have ended the battle instantly by using the power of the Operation Fruit. Without energy defense, the Operation Fruit's cutting power ignored hardness, meaning even vibranium could be sliced through. With energy defense, it depended on the strength of both opponents. Shen Fei had tested this both upon entering and leaving Kamar-Taj. Upon entering, he couldn't cut through magical artifacts, but after leaving, he could already cut through ordinary artifacts. However, that would have ended the battle too quickly. Having encountered a powerful being like Wesker, Shen Fei wanted to test his own strength. The villain's suicidal tendencies are justified. At that moment, Shen Fei felt like the villain, suicidal. He could have been killed directly, but he chose to play along. Faced with Shen Fei's attack, Wesker immediately calmed down. Although he didn't know what was going on, he knew he would understand once he captured Shen Fei. The two men fighting looked evenly matched to Ada, their speed, strength, and reflexes similar. Huff, huff. After sending Wesker flying with a kick, Shen Fei took a few deep breaths. Fighting, as expected, consumed more energy than regular exercise. I thought I was much stronger than Wesker, but it turns out we're about the same. He had hit Wesker many times, but Wesker had also hit him many times. I'll never do something like this again. This time, I'll just treat it as a willful act. Feeling the pain in his body and head, Shen Fei made a decision in his heart. After making the decision, Shen Fei immediately stepped back, a saber appearing in his hand. Room, slaughterhouse. As Wesker rushed over, Shen Fei immediately swung the saber in his hand. In an instant, Wesker, who was rushing towards him, was like being torn apart by 5 horses. His body split into 6 parts and scattered in the air. His limbs, head, and body were separated in an instant. Then Shen Fei waved his hands and haphazardly pieced together Wesker's limbs and body. As for Wesker's head, it flew in front of him. "You've seen enough, it's time to go." Shen Fei put on the ring, opened the portal, and returned to his room, followed by Ada, who was holding Wesker's body. "Now we can talk properly, Mr. Wesker," Shen Fei said calmly after placing Wesker's head on the table to the side. "Still alive like this, what a remarkable ability." Perhaps because he was appointed, Wesker's expression was very calm at this moment. "You accepted it quickly, but that's true. He's a ruthless man after all. Not everyone dares to gamble their life on the future. It seems you know a lot." "I don't remember me saying my name was Wesker," Wesker's head said with a smile. "I was careless," Shen Fei immediately realized, but now it didn't matter. "Of course. I was one of the masterminds behind the Raccoon City incident. I almost died there, so why wouldn't I investigate? You should be aware of your situation. This time, you're doomed. Why would I give you what you want if I'm already dead?" Wesker was quite clever, and of course he'd guessed Shen Fei had ulterior motives. "You should know there's something called truth serum. If you had a complete body, you might be able to resist it, but with only your head, it's impossible. There's also hypnosis. I want to get what I want from your mind. There are ways, but I just don't want to go to the trouble. Wouldn't it be better if we both saved ourselves the trouble?" "What do you want?" Wesker said after a brief silence. "Everything you know, I want it," Shen Fei said. "You're really greedy. Okay, but I have one condition. Help me kill Chris, and I'll tell you everything I know," Wesker said with a sneer. "Impossible," Shen Fei said, shaking his head. "You're not qualified to make any demands, and I don't necessarily need to obtain what's in your mind. As far as I know, you've been researching for so long and haven't yet found a qualified enhancement potion. You're only successful because you're special. While I've already achieved some results, that's the only condition. If it doesn't work, kill me," Wesker said, closing his eyes. "Forget it. Chris and I are friends. How could I possibly kill him? Since you don't want to talk, don't blame me." Shen Fei had a potential threat to Wesker, but after thinking it over, he decided against it, believing it was too despicable. As he'd said before, with the power of the opera fruit, there were other ways to obtain what he wanted from Wesker's mind. "I don't know what you want, but I might be able to help you," Ada, who had remained silent, said. "Do you know the origin of the Umbrella Corporation's progenitor virus?" Shen Fei turned to Ada and asked. "I don't know, but I can go investigate. I only need 2 things." Wesker's hand and an eyeball were what Ada needed. Now that Wesker was missing, with these 2 things, Ada could easily enter Umbrella Corporation's most secret base. "I'll go with you," Shen Fei said after thinking it over. Okay. Chapter 34, The Red Queen and the Stairway to the Sun, Part 1. This guy's really brave enough to inject any virus into his body. Although Shen Fei said he'd be working with Ada, it wasn't a one-time move. Preparations were needed. During these days, Shen Fei began analyzing the viruses in Wesker's body. There were T-virus, G-virus, parasites, and a mysterious virus, which must have been the progenitor virus. With all 4 mixed together, he could still maintain his human form without changing. He was truly Wesker. Shen Fei also prepared to hypnotize Wesker. Someone like Wesker, with his unwavering faith, was incredibly difficult to hypnotize. Even the renowned Marvel hypnotist, Purple Man, was useless against a Wesker like that. But for Shen Fei, this wasn't a problem at all. With the power of the opera fruit, he could easily cut open a brain. The reason for the several days of preparation was that Shen Fei hadn't considered extracting intelligence from another person's brain. He needed to familiarize himself with a brain structure. While familiarizing himself with a brain structure would be difficult for others, Shen Fei couldn't do it. He could just cut it open and examine it, and it wouldn't be as disgusting as a real brain. So that's how it is. After consulting with a professor of neurology at Imperial New York University, Shen Fei finally understood what to do. For ordinary people, brain surgery is a very difficult task, but for Shen Fei, it is a very simple matter. and it does not require a special sterile room. The room of the operation fruit is a perfect operating room. Since he can obtain information through this method, Shen Fei no longer has the mood to persuade Wesker. Of course, the method of threatening him with Wesker's son is even more useless. I didn't expect to get such a surprise. Spencer hasn't been killed by him yet. After some operations, Shen Fei immediately obtained a lot of information from Wesker. After the Raccoon City incident, the diehards of Umbrella Corporation still evade Spencer's leadership. This faction was led by Sergei, who is also the leader of Umbrella Corporation's USS unit and a diehard fan of Spencer. This person was also the prototype of Tyrant, possessing a virus adaptation similar to Wesker's. This was the only subordinate still loyal to Spencer after the Raccoon City incident. The Raccoon City incident thrust Umbrella into a critical position. The directors of its labs around the world were no pushovers, each developing their own agenda. Coupled with the subsequent crackdown by S.H.I.E.L.D. and other nations, these labs quickly changed hands. As for Sergei, Wesker lured a BSA into breaching his base, and Wesker personally killed him. Wesker's motive for killing Sergei was simple: first, to find Spencer's whereabouts. His betrayal stemmed from the realization that he was merely one of Spencer's experiments, a lucky surviving experiment. During his infancy, Wesker had taken in numerous other infants who were injected with a progenitor virus. Ultimately, only 2 survived, a boy and a girl. Such a situation was unacceptable to Wesker. Another motive was to obtain the Umbrella data Sergei had taken with him. Raccoon City was Umbrella's headquarters, and all of its research was stored within its artificial intelligence, the Red Queen. Wesker is known for his vengeance, even against artificial intelligence. After killing Sergei, Wesker formatted the Red Queen, though he backed it up beforehand, demonstrating just how vindictive Wesker truly is. Originally, Wesker had planned to go directly for revenge, but after hearing Ada's report, he decided to kidnap Shen Fei and then seek revenge on Spencer. Perhaps the realization that he was a test subject sparked a newfound understanding, letting Wesker to use a biochemical virus to select a new human race, one he would become the god of. To achieve this, he naturally needed to perfect the virus, and someone like Shen Fei was exactly what he needed. Wesker wasn't specifically targeting him, he was simply in New York on a business deal. Shen Fei knew Wesker's business partner, Daniel Whitehall, one of Hydra's leaders, a man obsessed with genetics, making him a perfect partner for Umbrella. In addition to collaborating with Hydra, Wesker also partnered with Tri-Union Pharmaceuticals, a company ranked among the top 10 global pharmaceutical companies. Much like Umbrella, research requires money, and it requires a substantial amount. Wesker had secured the core of Umbrella, but without it, all that information would be nothing more than files on the Red Queen's hard drive. We've finally got the Stairs of the Sun and the Red Queen. Wesker's arrival fulfilled both of Shen Fei's goals. From Wesker's memories, Shen Fei learned that the Stairs of the Sun were located on a small island in West Africa. This island, along with the Raccoon City base, was the true core of Umbrella. The other branches were still unaware of the island's existence. What should we do with Wesker's body? After obtaining the information he needed and then seeing Wesker's body, Shen Fei fell silent. The Opno fruit has a transplantation ability, meaning that if Shen Fei desired, he could transfer a person's consciousness into Wesker's body, thus imbuing that person with Wesker's physical qualities. Shen Fei had originally decided not to reveal his transplanted abilities. This was completely different from revealing his magical powers in front of Rebecca. If Rebecca knew about this, he'd probably have to kill her to silence her. The fundamental reason Shen Fei hadn't made many friends since arriving in this world was the stark difference between Eastern and Western values and worldviews. After all, he wasn't the Shen Fei he'd grown up with in the United States. A penchant for publicity and fame was a common trait in the Western world. Iron Man and Spider-Man were prime examples, and even Hydra was no exception. They'd held back for so long, only to finally spring forth. Forget it, I can't stay. After a long moment of deliberation, Shen Fei finally decided not to take the risk. With his current abilities, hypnotizing someone wasn't a difficult feat, but it wasn't foolproof. Humans are incredibly fascinating creatures, just as a mother witnessing her child in distress can unleash astonishing power. Even with the power of the Opnumi, he couldn't guarantee the same. Although the probability is very small, Shen Fei is not prepared to take the risk even if there is a slight chance of leakage. If he really wants his subordinates, the worst that can happen is to use a virus to strengthen them. Even if they are not as strong as Wesker, it is no problem. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35, The Red Queen and the Stairway to the Sun, Part 2. Nestled among the mountains of West Africa, a towering, ancient castle towered atop an unnamed peak. Looks like this is it. After some preparation, Shen Fei decided to meet the last remaining founder of Umbrella Corporation. Let's go. After carefully examining the castle's location, Shen Fei immediately opened a portal, and the two of them appeared at the corner of the castle wall. Let's take a look first. Shen Fei then immediately activated the mirror space, using it to examine the castle's layout. It looks like there's been a lot of chaos here. Through the mirror space, he could clearly see signs of damage in many areas of the castle, bloodstains, and bullet holes everywhere. The 4 Tyrants, the security measures are quite good. After a quick inspection, Shen Fei found that the entire castle was empty except for Spencer, who was in a wheelchair and hooked to an IV, and the 4 Tyrants. Tyrant was arguably Umbrella Corporation's most successful biological weapon. Able to maintain his human form and understand commands, he was the perfect choice for bodyguards. The only problem was the Tyrant's high price and maintenance costs, which limited its use as a mass-produced biological weapon to Umbrella's top brass. Leave it to you, Shen Fei said, creating a watermelon-sized portal in the wall. Ada then took her pre-prepared Barrett sniper rifle, mounted it on Shen Fei's wall, and began aiming at the Tyrant outside. Kamar-Taj's methods of utilizing mirror space and portals were too primitive. Even Cassius used magic against magic. However, Shen Fei believed that the combination of magic and technology was the most powerful. For example, in this situation, using it as a killer was simply invincible. Believe it or not, I'll open a portal next to your head and kill you with one shot. Bang, bang, bang. 4 consecutive shots, and all 4 Tyrants were shot dead in the head before they could even determine where their enemies were or who they were. After confirming the Tyrants were all dead, Shen Fei and Ada emerged from the portal, appearing directly before a panicked Spencer. I'll go check the surrounding situation, Ada said and left without waiting for Shen Fei to speak. As a top agent, Ada is of course also top-notch in terms of eyesight. The reason why she left to check the surrounding situation is not fake. After all, it is normal to ignore certain things when looking at everything in reality from the mirror space. But the more important reason is that Ada did not want to disturb the conversation between Shen Fei and Spencer. After all, Spencer is the founder of Umbrella Corporation and may know some of the secrets hidden by Umbrella Corporation. Unlike Rebecca, Ada knows what to ask and what not to ask. Who are you? What do you want to do? After all, he is the founder of Umbrella Corporation. After the slightest panic, he quickly regained his composure. It looks like you are dying. Shen Fei glanced at the bottle on Spencer's side, then expanded the field of the surgical fruit, then shook his head and said lightly. Spencer's body had long been failing, but his continued existence was thanks to years of research by the Umbrella Corporation. While the company had suffered repeated setbacks with its bioviruses, the resulting drugs had boosted its profits. The IV drip contained something akin to life force, keeping Spencer alive. For an ordinary person, a single bottle of this substance would likely be beyond their reach, yet Spencer had to keep it constantly on. I won't die. I absolutely won't die. The very word death seemed to provoke Spencer, sending him into a frenzy. I could have become a god. It's all them, they're holding me back. I could have been an immortal god. An immortal god? How ridiculous. Shen Fei shook his head helplessly, watching Spencer's madness. Odin was so powerful, yet he still died in the end. I came here to see you die. Oh, I forgot to tell you, I'm a survivor from Raccoon City. Perhaps it was the words Raccoon City that reassured Spencer. You're here to kill me, that's right, Shen Fei said, removing Spencer's IV drip. Spencer tried to stand up to stop Shen Fei, but Shen Fei dodged, and Spencer's hands missed, causing him to fall to the ground. Already weak, Spencer's breath weakened even further after the fall. Anyone else, like Rebecca, Shirley, Calson, and the others, would have felt pity for Spencer and perhaps rushed him to the hospital. Unfortunately, Shen Fei lacked their compassion. A compassionate heart, or kindness, is a valuable quality, but in reality, most people dislike such people, including Shen Fei. Shen Fei didn't dislike kindness, on the contrary, He respected them greatly. However, he kept his distance from those with compassionate qualities, believing they were the epitome of a teammate who would only betray their own team. Bad people are easily forgiven for anything they do, ultimately causing them to harm even more people. Shen Fei sometimes struggled to understand those sanctimonious people. Does converting bad people mean sacrificing more lives? Ultimately, sanctimoniousness is nothing more than self-satisfaction. As long as they're satisfied, they don't care about the lives of others. He's dying, I might as well ask. After noticing Spencer's dwindling breath, Shen Fei thought for a moment and used the opera fruit to hypnotize Spencer. What? Captain America's enhanced serum is formulated using the progenitor virus. Shen Fei was shocked to hear this from Spencer. That makes sense, but then Shen Fei realized it was possible. Where did Red Skull and Captain America's enhanced serum come from, and how it was created, remains a mystery. Perhaps we can use quantum tunneling to go back to the moment Captain America appears and see how it's done. Captain America's strength isn't just about his enhanced serum, but also about how he consumes it. The Red Skull's method of using the enhanced serum was very simple, which was direct injection. However, Captain America not only used a lot of auxiliary drugs, but also mobilized half of the electricity in New York at the time to catalyze the enhanced serum. No one has been able to do this so far, including Shen Fei. So that's how it is. Is this the origin of the Stairs of the Sun? It's really surprising. After getting the information he wanted, Shen Fei let Spencer fend for himself there. Perhaps because he was a person of that era, Spencer's residence did not have much of the atmosphere of modern society, but was full of classical atmosphere. After throwing Spencer's body and the 4 bodies of Ivan the Tyrant into the mirror space, Shen Fei walked out of the castle gate. Ada was waiting outside with a box. Let's go. Chapter 36, The Red Queen and the Stairway to the Sun, Part 2. Sir, this is all of Umbrella's current research progress. Inside Umbrella's West African base, a massive computer screen displayed a vast amount of data covering biology, pharmaceuticals, metallurgy, tempered glass strengthening, and more, mostly high-tech products. It was clear from this that Umbrella hadn't produced even a tenth of this data. In modern society, no single company can encompass every aspect of its business. Even Stark, when crafting his Iron Man suit, had to purchase various specialized metals from outside sources. It wasn't that Stark couldn't research these things, but rather that human energy was limited, and it was impossible to cover every detail. Umbrella's research into these things was forced upon them. Their true focus was on biological and viral research, and frequent external procurement of supplies would easily lead to discovery. This is precisely why Umbrella was able to maintain such a deep concealment. For example, metallurgy and tempered glass strengthening were researched to contain test subjects. Umbrella had a metal they used internally, the TG series. Secretly developed by Umbrella, the TG series metals boasted exceptional strength while being at least half the weight of other comparable metals. It also possesses another crucial advantage: it can evade most metal detectors and avoid X-ray detection during customs. This metal has undoubtedly contributed significantly to Umbrella's secrecy. Another example is tempered glass. Like in some movies, where test subjects shatter tempered glass with a few hits during testing, this might happen at other companies, but not at Umbrella. To cope with the Tyrant series of test subjects, Umbrella manufactures its own tempered glass, undergoes extensive testing, and is even specially thickened during construction. This is all due to Umbrella's deep pockets. The existence of some of these laboratories stems from limited funds, a need to minimize expenditures and exercise thriftiness. If these materials were sold, Umbrella's value would be even higher. Apart from anything else, TG series metals can be used to manufacture weapons, vehicles, and even aircraft. For the sake of Umbrella, or perhaps more accurately, for his own apotheosis, Spencer has devoted all his energy to this endeavor, but unfortunately, his plans are often unsuccessful, and his subordinates are all traitors. Otherwise, relying on the Veronica virus, Spencer might have survived for a considerable time. The Veronica virus's 15-year integration period wasn't a problem for Spencer. Whether it was being frozen for 15 years or having an organ transplant, he could handle it. After all, even a drug lord had supported his daughter for 15 years. After all, even a certain drug lord had supported his daughter for 15 years. After leaving Spencer's castle, Shen Fei and Ada arrived at Wesker's secret base, where the information, viruses, and the Red Queen, Wesker had obtained from Umbrella Corporation, were stored. Using Wesker's identity, Shen Fei easily rewrote the Red Queen's underlying code, transferring control. He also changed the Red Queen's voice to a young woman's, the Red Queen. This caused Ada to look at him with a strange expression. At first, Shen Fei didn't understand the meaning of that look, but he eventually understood it. It was a look of Lolita, leaving him speechless. After a few days together, the two had become somewhat familiar. Shen Fei asked Ada if she wanted to change jobs. After all, he was now a billionaire, so offering her a job was not a problem. But Ada refused. Ada was a freelance agent, akin to a mercenary, working for whoever paid her. Of course, this was Ada's own claim, and Shen Fei didn't know if it was true, but based on the intelligence he knew, it seemed likely. Of course, that wasn't her reason for refusing. She refused because she loved this adventurous life, the feeling of walking on the edge of a knife. That was her biggest reason for becoming an agent. Ada was very similar to Black Widow, except that she disliked too much restriction, which is why she didn't join S.H.I.E.L.D. We don't have a holographic imaging system. It looks like we need to ask Stark for one. While Red Queen was an intelligent system, recreating the effects Iron Man had in his lab would require a holographic imaging system. It's not going to be easy to bring these things back to New York, Ada asked curiously, looking at the massive container before her. To fully utilize the capabilities of an intelligent system, the hardware required was enormous. Jarvis's servers were buried deep within Stark's villa. Similarly, the Red Queen's various devices combined filled a shipping container. This was just the standard configuration. For more advanced features, external equipment would be required. Don't worry, this isn't too difficult for me. You love adventure, don't you? This time, I'll show you a real adventure. The shipping container issue was simple for Shen Fei. He could just use PIM particles. Although he'd used up his supply and hadn't crafted new ones, he still had PIM particle darts. While he had a favorable impression of Aida, even liking her, he couldn't reveal all her secrets at once. It's just a primitive tribe. The stairway to the sun appeared in a primitive tribe. Despite entering modern society, some parts of Africa still have primitive tribes, and their systems are the most chaotic. Let's not even talk about other places, just look at Wakanda. While they have the technology to produce camouflage shields, their system for selecting a king remains primitive. Not to mention, their vibranium-made weapons are primarily for close combat. A vibranium hoe, you can believe it. Their detailed understanding of the stairs to the sun stemmed from a book Ada had brought from the castle. It was this book that led Spencer and his companions to the stairs. Natural History Survey, as the book is called, is the title of a book written by an explorer centuries ago during his expeditions to Africa. The 72 volumes meticulously document the geography, climate, fauna, flora, minerals, population distribution, and folk customs of the regions he traveled through. However, due to the sheer absurdity of some of the content, it was not taken seriously as fact, but rather as an adventure novel. Coupled with political and war-related factors, the book is no longer available. Spencer was able to access the book because his family was a prominent European family, and the book contained a comprehensive set of natural history surveys. After reading about the stairs to the sun, young Spencer was intrigued and invited his then young friend Edward and biology student Marcus to embark on an expedition to find the stairs to the sun. In the book Natural History Survey, the stairs of the sun are described as a necessary step in a primitive tribe's king selection process. Only those who consume the stairs and survive can become the tribe's king, gaining immense powers, centuries of lifespan, and invulnerability. This is precisely why the book was considered an adventure novel at the time. To most people, such abilities were only possible in fiction, not in reality. However, Spencer and Edward, young and dreaming, yearned to gain such powers. They eventually discovered the stairs of the sun and extracted the progenitor virus from it, which became the origin of the Umbrella Corporation. Shen Fei was reminded of the heart-shaped herb found in Wakanda, as the two share similar effects. If this primitive tribe hadn't perished so early, perhaps continued development could have created a nation similar to Wakanda. Virus antibodies are hereditary, just like Wesker's son, who already possesses them. This minimizes the chances of failure for these individuals who consume the stairs of the sun. What is this? Ada paused, watching a strange light flickering ahead, a spectacle like countless shards of glass floating in the air. Anomaly. What wasn't recorded in the Natural History Survey was that the stairway to the sun wasn't a plant native to Earth at all, but rather a plant that appeared at a permanent anomaly within a cave in this primitive tribe. Chapter 37 Goodbye Cowlson, Part 1. This is another world. After crossing the anomaly and arriving on the other side, Ada's face was filled with confusion as she surveyed the surroundings. Even for a top-tier agent like Ada, it was perfectly normal for her to have doubts when faced with something like this. The facts are right before our eyes, aren't they? Shen Fei said, ignoring Ada and heading straight ahead. About 500 meters ahead stood a tall altar with dozens of stone steps. Sure enough, the stairs of the sun should be atop that altar. Shen Fei had seen such an altar before, and also in the cave murals. The altar on the other side was likely modeled after this one, but how this one was constructed was unknown. It must be said that even primitive tribes possessed considerable ingenuity. Building such an altar in that era was beyond the reach of ordinary people. I want to take a look around, Ada said after carefully observing the surroundings. Be careful, this island might not be completely safe. Also, don't waste too much time. No problem, the anomaly was flanked by islands on either side, perhaps the true reason the stairway to the sun had been kept secret for so long. To protect the secret, Spencer and his companions frantically massacred the entire primitive tribe. Even now, human bones and ruined buildings can be seen on the island. To maintain secrecy, the three of them had agreed not to reveal the island's location. Each time they reached the stairway to the sun, one of them would personally come. As for the guards who had protected them all the way to the island, they were poisoned after the three of them left. Across from the anomaly, aside from the tall altar, there was no sign of human presence or buildings, though the remains of wild animals could be seen. Most importantly, the beasts here were much larger than normal. There's no sound of birds or insects. It seems this is a forbidden zone for life. Although Shen Fei had little experience in wilderness exploration, he did have some basic knowledge, not to mention having Ada by his side. During their time together, Shen Fei sought out Ada's advice on special agents whenever he had the chance. Not to become one, but to guard against them. For example, he'd learn how to detect bugs in cameras. Without a professional, these things were difficult to detect. A successful agent, especially one like Ada or Black Widow, needed to master a vast array of skills. First and foremost was piloting proficiency, the ability to fly airplanes, submarines, and any vehicle in between. Then came hacking proficiency. In today's world, without that, you couldn't be considered a serious agent. Then there were weapons proficiency, wilderness survival proficiency, combat proficiency, and so on. A lot of people died for this thing. Arriving near the altar, Shen Fei noticed the stone steps strewn with the remains of various creatures, both human and other. Even more bones lay at the very top. Trying to become powerful by eating the sun stairs is a life or death gamble for ordinary people or animals. Success means becoming the tribal leader and enjoying wealth and glory. While Shen Fei viewed this primitive tribe's wealth and glory as ordinary, for the tribe's inhabitants, it was a true luxury. Failure meant instant death. There was a small chance of becoming a monster. Perhaps this was the reason the island lacked any signs of life. Sun stairs. The sun stairs were a vibrantly colored flower that only grew in the center of the topmost portion of the altar. Is the soil special? Shen Fei asked, using the power of the surgery fruit to analyze the composition of the ground beneath the sun stairs. The results were mostly incomprehensible to him. Probably similar to heart-shaped grass, Spencer and his team initially spent a considerable amount of money on research to transplant the sun stairs, but the result was that once transplanted, the sun stairs became an ordinary flower, losing its magical powers, even if the soil was transplanted along with it. Just as oranges grown in the south are oranges, grown in the north are bitter oranges. I'm sorry. With these words, Shen Fei immediately cleared out the existing stairway to the sun and planted several powerful bombs around it, preparing to completely destroy the area. A botanist witnessing Shen Fei's actions would undoubtedly fight him to the death. This plant is a unique species. Even without considering its effectiveness, such extermination is reprehensible. Unfortunately, Shen Fei isn't a botanist. Even if he were, he wouldn't preserve it. The risks are too great. While this might seem unfounded, it's necessary for safety. Earth already has so many dangerous viruses, adding another one is unacceptable. Furthermore, with the disappearance of the stairway to the sun, this family of viruses will become increasingly rare over time. The T-virus, derived from the progenitor virus, is the source of all viral enhancements. As we all know, viruses cannot survive on their own and must rely on the vitality of living organisms to reproduce. This is the fundamental reason most viruses are lethal. However, The T-virus possesses a unique characteristic: it can rewrite the genes of living organisms, something most viruses cannot do. Currently, the only virus capable of doing this is the heart-shaped grass. Human genes are exclusive, so in a situation like Spider-Man's, only radiated spiders could achieve this, and even then, not all radiated spiders could do it. Spider-Man's emergence was both accidental and inevitable. A bite to another human wouldn't grant them superpowers, but a hospital admission, or worse, a ticket to hell. However, if the T-virus and spider genes were combined, recreating Spider-Man wouldn't be difficult. Strictly speaking, Ant-Man, Squidward, or Lizard-Man could all be created. According to traditional Chinese medicine, the T-virus is a genetic modification agent, inducing genetic changes. The Veronica virus was created by combining the T-virus with an ancient queen ant. Of course, this is only theoretical. Achieving a perfect fusion presents numerous challenges, and even for most scientists, it's unsolvable. But for Shen Fei, it's a completely solvable problem. "I wonder what this world is like," Ada said, gazing at the endless sea in the distance. Who knows? Of course, Spencer and his companions weren't solely focused on the stairway to the sun in this world. Unfortunately, leaving the island and exploring other areas proved too difficult for them. The anomaly was too small to accommodate modern ships. Trying to build a ship using materials from the island and sail the sea on a raft without the aura of a protagonist was simply courting death. Spencer and his companions had initially sent several waves of people to explore this world, but unfortunately, no one returned. Furthermore, Spencer's focus at the time was on the progenitor and T-viruses, so he stopped sending anyone. Whether those who were sent out perished, discovered something, or even merged into this world, no one would know until someone returned. "You don't want to go and see," Ada said, smiling at Shen Fei. Exploring this world might be difficult for ordinary people, but for Shen Fei, it wasn't difficult at all, if he wanted to. First, his dimensional magic could be used in this world, suggesting an unknown connection between this world and Earth. It wasn't impossible that this world was a world from the past or the future. Furthermore, even if the anomaly were closed now, Shen Fei could still use magic to open a portal to Earth. This was the wonder of dimensional magic. He even considered leaving a magical mark on this world, allowing him to return at any time. Unfortunately, Shen Fei had no desire to return. With his current strength, opening such a portal would likely require a long rest. This wasn't a big deal. At most, he wouldn't have to use magic later. The problem was, who knew what this world was like? Without a world map, his portals could only open within his line of sight. As for opening random portals, unless he was seeking death, it was best avoided. He could always open portals to other worlds once he was strong enough. There was no need to risk them now. With so many sun stairs, Shen Fei's magical prowess could grow even stronger in the future. Just as Kamar-Taj can heal the body through the soul, so too can a stronger body strengthen the soul. Chapter 38 Goodbye Cowlson, Part 2. Boom, boom, boom. With a series of violent explosions, the tall altar was completely destroyed, and even the small island trembled several times in the blast. Near the anomaly, Shen Fei and Ada heard the explosions in the distance, looked back at the rising smoke, and then passed through the anomaly. Shen Fei then immediately closed the anomaly. As he left the cave, he reappeared at the altar and blew up the altar in the cave again. If there were any archaeologists here at that moment, they would definitely fight him to the death. The patterns around the altar and the murals inside the cave were all precious artifacts. Ada felt a little sorry about this, but she didn't say much. After all, she was an agent, not an archaeologist. Adventure was just her hobby, not a pursuit of fame. Just like some wealthy kids who enjoy clubbing, skydiving, and car racing. As for Shen Fei, he didn't want fame even more. Keeping a low profile was the way to go. This was Shen Fei's motto. If he wanted to become famous, as long as he tried to expose his identity, he would definitely be in the news. "You're leaving," Ada said shortly after returning to Shen Fei's small villa in New York. "You have a mission," Ada said with a smile. "I've taught you everything I need to. From now on, it's all up to you. Of course, if you have any missions, you can give them to me. Of course, you'll need a reward, okay? Then do 4 things for me first. The reward is that I can provide it to you once I complete my research on the enhancement potion," Shen Fei said after a moment's consideration. "Tell me about it," Ada said with a smile. "First, help me find a missing child named Peter. He was probably a teenager when he disappeared. His mother seems to have died of a brain tumor or cancer, and his father is missing. He's been missing for about 10 or 20 years. The man Shen Fei was referring to was Star-Lord, also known as Fool or perhaps just Fool. He'd called him Star-Lord so many times that Shen Fei only knew his first name, Peter, and his last name was completely unknown. He had no idea where he was from or when he disappeared from Earth. Who could remember so much after watching a movie? That's a very difficult condition to find. Are there any other requirements? Ada asked immediately. Also, he's an American. He should live in a state with at least 4 letters. That's all I know for now. There's no rush. Take your time searching. It should be fine within a few years. I'll do my best. Ada nodded. As for why Shen Fei was looking for someone who had been missing for so long, that wasn't on Ada's radar. The second thing is easy. I need vibranium. I'll contact them, but I'm afraid the price will be very high. As a freelance agent, Ada knew some of the high-priced items on the black market. Price isn't an issue. I need it as soon as possible, the more the better, at least 30 kilograms. Shen Fei waved his hand, looking ostentatious. The third thing is I need a blood orchid. Find a way to get it, or find out where to find it. It's all up to you. Shen Fei had only recently learned about the blood orchid, which was said to grant eternal youth. He'd heard this from the hacker community. It had to be said that the hacker community was full of hidden secrets. While much of it was fabricated to scam people, some of it might be true. When Shen Fei first heard about the blood orchid, he was a bit surprised. He'd heard the name before, from Anaconda. Initially, Shen Fei also thought the legend unreliable, but considering Umbrella Corporation, the Anomaly Point, and Marvel all appeared in the same world, the blood orchid might actually exist. Isn't this a legend? Ada asked, a bit surprised. As expected, every woman is fascinated by the blood orchid legend. After all, it's said to preserve eternal youth. Compared to men, women are more obsessed with it. In the underground world, the bounty on a blood orchid is extremely high, especially recently, when someone offered a large sum. That's how Shen Fei learned about it. It has the same effect as the G-Virus in Shirley's body. Now that Shen Fei has a sample of the G-Virus, it's not impossible for him to create a device that can preserve eternal youth. Even so, the blood orchid still has a vital role for Shen Fei. Given that pythons can grow so large after eating a blood orchid, the blood orchid must possess a very strong vitality, assuming it truly exists. I know, but someone's offering a large bounty lately, so it's possible. Just keep an eye out for relevant information, and don't try to find it yourself. It's very dangerous there. The giant python guarding the blood orchid is no easy task. While Ada's strength is impressive, facing a giant python is still very dangerous. You seem to know a lot about this, Ada asked with a smile. After all, I'm a billionaire now. The advantage of being rich is that just spread the word and people will deliver things to you. It's what they call playing to your heart's content. For example, there are professionals who specialize in preparing special ingredients for the wealthy, like premium caviar, A5 grade beef, and high-quality truffles. As long as you can afford it, they can be delivered to your door, guaranteed fresh. There are also food appreciation events, art auctions, and antique auctions, all specifically for the wealthy. Although Shen Fei isn't currently attending these, he's heard a lot about them from Little Pepper. These are events that celebrities often attend. Many of the paintings hanging in Tony's villa were acquired through these auctions. Shen Fei had never heard of any of these artists. The most famous painting he'd heard of was the Mona Lisa Smile, and the painters were all deceased. He'd never heard of any modern artists, they weren't even in the same league. Tony's participation in these events wasn't because they were interesting. With his inconsiderate personality, he attended them to find women. To be a celebrity, all you had to do was have enough money. As the mysterious chairman of FIFA Group, he'd accepted plenty of invitations, but he'd never wanted to participate in such events. What about the last one? For the last one, I need you to find something. You must first find a book. It's probably set in Norway, and the content is something like this, Shen Fei explained, revealing his knowledge of the Berserker's staff. Although Shen Fei had initially been searching for books on Norse mythology, including novels, he initially thought there wouldn't be many. But upon searching, he discovered there were a significant number of similar novels abroad, leaving him with no clue what to look for. Now he had to enlist Ada's help. Of course, we could wait until some Chunibayao dug it up, but who knows how long that wait would take. Remember, once you find it, never touch it. It's dangerous to ordinary people. It looks like you know what's inside. Yes. But I can only tell you the details once you bring it to me. Also, come back in a month. I should be able to finish the potion by then. Shen Fei stood up and continued, I'll take you wherever you want to go. Thank you so much, Ada said, naming a place, and Shen Fei sent her there through a portal. I hope you won't let me down. Of the 4 things, the last one was a test for Ada. If she didn't bring the berserker staff, Shen Fei would have to change some of the subsequent things. Chapter 39 Goodbye Carlson, Part 2. He really enjoys it. Just leave him alone. Inside Stark's New York villa, Shen Fei said to Pepper, watching him mingling with various beauties. That's just the way he is, Pepper said, her smile still etched on his face. Stark's villa boasted a spacious hall, practically a ballroom. Every once in a while, Stark would invite numerous beauties to a banquet. How did you find time to come here today? What's going on? Pepper asked. I'm looking to buy a villa, right by the sea, on Staten Island, about the same size as this one. After acquiring the Red Queen, the small villa had outgrown its former location. You've finally decided to move out. If not, why not buy here? Pepper smiled at Shen Fei. If he followed American principles, Shen Fei would have already bought a luxury villa, luxury cars, and a private jet. This was essentially the standard for the super rich. Stark, for example, had several luxury villas and a fleet of luxury cars, at least one luxury car on the market, as well as 6 private jets, several yachts, and 2 private islands. There were some things, like luxury cars, that Tony had never driven. You know my personality. I like the quiet over there, Shen Fei said with a smile. Of New York's 5 boroughs, Manhattan is the most populous and affluent, home to many Fortune 500 companies, including Stark Enterprises. Owning a mansion in Manhattan was also a symbol of wealth. Stark had many mansions, and the one in New York was second only to his California home in status. It was Stark's true home, with only a select few allowed in. Pepper held second highest authority there, second only to Stark. Unlike Tony, who spent most of his time there when he became Iron Man, Tony now spent most of his time in New York. After all, Manhattan was far more prosperous than there, and at least there were many beautiful women. Stark only went there when he needed quiet time to think. To him, it was no different from New York. Both have Jarvis. I'll keep an eye on it, Pepper nodded. Thank you. Buying a mansion in Manhattan might be a possibility after the Battle of New York, but now? It would be a shame if it was destroyed. Previously, Shen Fei hadn't known where the Battle of New York took place, but now he knew for sure. After all, Stark Tower was so obvious, and only Tony, a flamboyant figure, would have his name engraved on it. Of course, he couldn't tell Pepper about this. It's true that the life of the super-rich is a leisurely one. As CEO of Fei Fei Group and Stark's secretary, Pepper wasn't busy much. Most of her time was spent on overseeing the company's direction. She had a plethora of talented managers to complete her tasks. Hello, long time no see. Yes, come in, Shen Fei said, waving Carlson and Melinda in. From their appearance, he knew it must be Rebecca who had reported his situation. Shen Fei had been debating how to respond if Hydra came, but now Carlson and Melinda had arrived, saving him a lot of trouble. What would you like to drink? No, thank you. I think you understand why we're here. Don't blame Rebecca, it's S.H.I.E.L.D's policy. True to his usual good nature, Carlson immediately defended Rebecca. Although Shen Fei said he didn't mind, it was impossible to say so when the situation arose. Don't worry, I know all this stuff. You're here to register, Shen Fei said, pouring them a cup of coffee. Yes, there are actually a few more things I want to ask, Carlson asked with a smile. Go ahead. According to Rebecca's report, she said you're a magician. We want to confirm that. Carlson wasn't the first to encounter superpowers being treated as magic. He'd even encountered people claiming to be the son of God or even gods. Those who gain powers and believe they're special are quite common among superpowers. Haven't you seen some thugs claim to be gods after getting a berserker staff? So, even though they'd confirmed it with Rebecca several times, they still needed to confirm it. I want to point out one thing you've got wrong. I'm not a magician, I'm a wizard, Shen Fei said, waving his index finger at Carlson and the others. Ever since Rebecca said she'd report the matter, Shen Fei had been mulling over how to respond to S.H.I.E.L.D. After careful consideration, he had a plan in mind. Is there any difference? Aren't they the same? Callison and Melinda exchanged a puzzled glance before Callison continued. There's a huge difference. First, let me clarify one thing. Real wizards are completely different from those in the movies. Wait, how do you know your powers aren't superpowers, but magic? Melinda suddenly interjected. It's simple. I acquired them through learning, Shen Fei said with a smile, ignoring Melinda's interruption. Learning? That's just like in the movies, Callison nodded. Then could you please demonstrate your powers? Like, maybe throw a fireball or something, Melinda continued. Looking at Callison and Melinda, who seemed to be expecting Shen Fei to suddenly unleash a fireball, Shen Fei smiled helplessly and shook his head. The magic of Kamar-Taj was powerful, but it was all melee-focused. Fireballs and the like couldn't be conjured up. I've said it before, don't judge real mages by what you learn from movies, Shen Fei said, sitting up straight. First, you need to understand what a mage is. A mage pursues the fundamental principles of heaven and earth, the laws governing the universe. We are completely different from sorcerers who only know how to fight. Wait, what did you just say? Callison interrupted Shen Fei with a confused look on his face. He then stared at Melinda, hoping she would explain. He had originally thought Melinda wouldn't have to go on field missions, but because Shen Fei was Chinese, she had come here. Don't look at me. I don't know either, Melinda said, a little annoyed. Can you explain it briefly? Callison's words were polite, but the underlying meaning was, speak human language. Simply put, mages are modern scientists, Shen Fei said bluntly. Are you kidding me? Callison said, his expression joking. So-called magic is nothing more than unproven science. Without waiting for Callison to object, Shen Fei pulled out a lighter and lit it. If you saw this in the Middle Ages, what would you think? Science, magic, or modern medicine? Don't let your preconceived notions cloud your judgment. Callison smacked his lips, unsure what to say. Melinda, beside him, did the same. The only difference between us and modern scientists is that they observe the world through various instruments, while we observe the world through our own means. Shen Fei clasped his hands together. When he separated them, a golden beam of light appeared before him. As he continued, the beam transformed into a golden disk, upon which magical marks slowly appeared, finally dissipating into a sky of fireworks. There are all kinds of people among mages. For example, I'm best at biochemistry and medicine. That's why you were able to create a vaccine for the virus so quickly, Melinda said thoughtfully. Not bad, Shen Fei nodded with a smile. So, in some ways, your company's products are magical products, Melinda continued. You could say that, from what you're saying, there are other mages, Callison finally realized. Of course, I have teachers too. I wonder if I could meet them, Callison and Melinda said after a tacit glance. I'm sorry, I can't, Shen Fei smiled and shook his head. Perhaps you don't know S.H.I.E.L.D's responsibilities. I know very well what S.H.I.E.L.D is, and I know very well what your responsibilities are. You're the ones who really don't know anything. The most disgusting thing about S.H.I.E.L.D is that they think they have everything under control, working for world peace, yet they don't even know they've been parasitized by Hydra. How do you think Dr. Abraham Erskine invented this strengthening serum, and how did Newton discover gravity? Just as the two of them were about to say something, their faces changed. You mean they were mages? Callison exclaimed. Shen Fei smiled at Callison's question, saying, you said that, not me. It's not that I don't want you to meet the Sorcerer Supreme, but even if I told you where he was, you wouldn't be able to find him. There's no place S.H.I.E.L.D can't find, Callison said confidently. Is that so? Shen Fei said, forming a seal with his hands again. The golden magic circle reappeared, and then a space map of Earth appeared between the three of them. Do you know what this is? Shen Fei asked, pointing to one of the azure planets. Earth, Callison nodded. Its official name is Planet C-53. Do you know what that means? That, Callison and Melinda's faces immediately changed. They were both very intelligent people, and they instantly connected many things to this number. Don't forget, in the United States, streets are generally named with numbers, except for the main streets. How can you prove that what you say is true? Melinda questioned. Sorry, we'll take our leave first. At this moment, Callison immediately stood up and pulled the somewhat stunned Melinda outside. Goodbye, Shen Fei smiled and saw them out. Nick Fury must be getting impatient now. On Earth, S.H.I.E.L.D was unavoidable. Since this was the case, Shen Fei fortunately decided to leak some information to attract Nick Fury's attention. The information he leaked seemed very important, But in fact, Fury was very clear about these things. With Captain Marvel as a friend, Fury must have some knowledge of alien intelligence. Only by attracting Fury's sufficient attention could he take the initiative in the subsequent events. Chapter 40 Captain America, Part 1. What the hell is going on? We haven't figured it out yet, and you're leaving now? You're asking me to go out on a mission like that? Inside the car, Melinda looked at Coulson questioningly. She hadn't wanted to deny Coulson's face before, but now there were no outsiders here. Could it be that everything he said was true? Melinda immediately realized. There are some things you don't know. Don't ask. Wait until you see the director. Coulson's words immediately stopped Melinda from asking further questions. The S.H.I.E.L.D. system states that no one can know more than a certain level of intelligence, even though Coulson is currently at the same level as her. Coulson drove the car and soon arrived at a private airport in New York. There, he boarded a Quinjet and flew to Washington, D.C., the headquarters of S.H.I.E.L.D. Trident. Coulson and Melinda got off the plane and went directly to the director's office. Come in. Upon hearing Fury's voice, the two immediately entered. Inside the office, Fury was listening to a report from a beautiful female agent. It was none other than Maria Hill, one of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s elite female agents and Nick Fury's closest confidant. Mission accomplished. What's the situation? Fury was well aware of Coulson and Melinda's mission. He saw no difficulty in the mission. If it weren't for the involvement of superpowers, and the connection to Stark Enterprise and S.H.I.E.L.D., there would be no need for his two trusted confidants to go along. As for superpowers, they were nothing. Nick Fury knew Captain Marvel, whose physical form could freely travel through space, not to mention the terrifying devourer he kept by his side. As for magic, Fury, like Coulson, was skeptical after hearing Rebecca's report. Coulson glanced at Hill with a hint of skepticism. Even though Hill was a level 9 agent, Coulson wasn't sure if he should know about this. He only knew because he was involved. I'll be out first, Hill nodded to the three of them, then walked out with the documents. Any questions? Tell me. Did Stark interfere? Fury said with a smile, leaning back in his chair after Hill left. Fury believed that if anything went wrong, the biggest problem would be Stark's involvement. As for Shen Fei, Coulson had thoroughly researched his file before his visit. Overall, he was harmless for the time being. Besides, Shen Fei was a billionaire, and he certainly couldn't compare to those with limited resources. He didn't need to rob. Coulson glanced at Melinda before speaking. Sir, he knows about Planet C-53, he repeated Shen Fei's words verbatim. The office fell silent. Fury's expression remained unchanged, which was understandable. He was black, and black people had a natural advantage as agents. It was harder to read people's expressions. Melinda stood nearby, her hands behind her back. From the atmosphere, she knew something was amiss. I'm going to go out for a moment, Hill, Fury said after a long pause. He then tapped a few times on the table, and a door opened to the side, revealing an elevator. Go meet him, Fury said, stepping into the elevator and motioning for Coulson and Melinda to follow. In terms of rank, Coulson and Melinda wouldn't have been involved in this matter at their current levels. But firstly, they were already involved, and secondly, Fury trusted them deeply. Fury had the final say on rank and right to know. Back so soon, Shen Fei said, surprised. He'd expected them to return. But their return so soon was unexpected, especially with someone following them. This is our director, Coulson said, respectfully introducing Nick Fury to Shen Fei. There was a reason why Coulson respected Fury so much, though it was just his own assumption. As far as Coulson knew, Fury had been captured and tortured by aliens, and had one eye blinded, but even then, Fury hadn't revealed anything. Little did he know, Fury's left eye had simply been scratched by a cat. If it had been just an ordinary cat, it wouldn't have been a big deal, but that particular ginger cat was different. Coulson has already told me everything. What else do you know about Planet C-53? Fury said gravely, staring at Shen Fei for a long moment. If it weren't for the designation C-53, which was unknown to most people, Fury wouldn't have come here in person. After all, he was the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Then what do you know? Shen Fei objected. Fury's body jolted at Shen Fei's words, and his eyes widened again. Humanity doesn't even have the ability to leave this planet right now. Knowing too much isn't a good thing, Shen Fei added, before Fury could even begin to speak. Despite the endless stream of cutting-edge technology in the Marvel Universe, spacecraft have made limited progress, with the furthest they've ever reached being within the solar system. Even explorations of the nearest moon have been plagued by frequent failures, though this isn't the fault of Earthlings. They likely couldn't imagine that the moon is owned, hence the frequent malfunctions of lunar exploration vehicles and the seemingly endless discoveries of astronauts. You told Callison earlier that mages are scientists, like Newton and the others, but from what I understand, he changed his beliefs in his later years, Fury said, changing the subject. That's the biggest difference between us. You always impose your own ideas on others. We have fundamentally different perspectives on the world. Who told you that beliefs and scientists conflict? Shen Fei's words caused Fury's face to darken. Of course, since it was already dark, he didn't notice the change. Give me an example, Shen Fei said, a golden beam appearing in his hand. Our understanding of the world and the universe is like the understanding of lightning by ancient people and modern people. Callison and Melinda's faces darkened at this statement. This clearly implied they were primitive. If you're so powerful, why haven't I heard of you? Fury, who kept trying to calm himself mentally, remained calm. Because humans are ignorant. Seeing the three people's faces change again, Shen Fei immediately changed his tone. Of course, I'm referring to the period before modern times. You all know what happened in the Middle Ages. Most of our ancestors left this planet. Of course, this was their home planet after all, so they would occasionally return to visit and seek successors. In that era, you already had the ability to leave this planet. Fury's voice was filled with shock. Didn't I tell you before? As Shen Fei spoke, a star map of the solar system appeared before him, then exploded, transforming into countless rays of light dancing above the living room. Our understanding of the world is different. You also have the ability to leave this planet, Fury asked curiously. My current strength isn't enough, not enough now, he said, but maybe in the future. Fury and the other two understood the hidden meaning. Of course. All this was fabricated by Shen Fei. He didn't care whether it would be dismantled in the future. By then, S.H.I.E.L.D wouldn't be around anymore, so what if it was exposed? Besides, there were explanations. It was just that the magic factions were different. They had no way of verifying this, anyway. Can ordinary people learn to be a mage? Of course not. Learning to be a mage depends entirely on talent. Otherwise, our ancestors wouldn't have left and could have just opened a mage school. Shen Fei shook his head. He wasn't lying. Kamar-Taj's magic, for ordinary people, could only strengthen their bodies at best. What about planet C-53? Do you have anything to say? A little. Shen Fei raised his index finger and waved it, then spoke. It wasn't me who said that. It was the ancestors who told me to tell those idiots who keep sending signals into outer space to behave themselves. Do they realize how idiotic it is to reveal their planet's coordinates in space? Are they trying to track predators? What are predators? A kind of interstellar pirate, a perpetrator of all sorts of evil, Shen Fei said gravely. By the way, let me tell you something, slavery is rampant in the universe. It's safe to say that if Earth weren't under the protection of Asgard, the predators would have arrived long ago. Don't assume that just because Star-Lord is a predator, they're all good people. Star-Lord is just an exception. Even Yondu has killed countless people. Is that so? Thank you very much. Shen Fei's words reaffirmed Fury's conviction. Shen Fei had always misunderstood one thing. He assumed that since Fury and Captain Marvel were friends, he must have a deep understanding of the universe. But in reality, he was overthinking it. They were friends, yes, but Captain Marvel was very busy. The Kree Empire was extremely powerful and vast, and Captain Marvel was very busy, otherwise she wouldn't have given Fury an emergency contact. This was evident from S.H.I.E.L.D's technological level. If the two were truly closely connected, they could easily obtain more advanced technology from her. This universe has no laws protecting lesser civilizations. Extermination of genocide is common for those with insufficient strength. On some planets with even lower levels of civilization, predators alone are enough to wipe out civilizations. Chapter 41 Captain America, Part 2. Thank you so much for this. Goodbye. Fury, after asking a few more questions about the aliens, stood up and prepared to leave. He seemed to have forgotten Master Shen Fei's identity. Don't be so anxious. Speaking of which, since the director has come, why don't we make a deal? Shen Fei's words made Fury sit back down immediately. What deal? Fury asked gravely. One piece of information for 100 kilograms of vibranium. There's a lot of vibranium circulating in Wakanda. Back then, Howard could get enough to build a shield, let alone S.H.I.E.L.D. today. Do you know what vibranium is? Fury's eyes widened. Of course I do, otherwise I wouldn't have asked for this, Shen Fei said with a smile. Since you know, you should know how much that much vibranium is worth. At the current black market price, 100 kilograms of vibranium is worth $1 billion, and that's just in theory. If such a large amount were actually available, the value would be much higher. Of course I know, but I believe my information is worth the price, Shen Fei said without changing his expression. First, tell me what the news is. After a moment of silence, Fury asked. News about Captain America, Shen Fei said bluntly. What? This time it was not Fury who spoke, but Coulson. As a die-hard fan of Captain America, he certainly could not remain indifferent to news. You know he is there, Fury moved his body and asked in a deep voice. Captain America is a legend. Even Fury was a little shaken when he heard the news. I didn't expect you to be such a person. That's Captain, and you actually used his body for trading. Coulson's target when looking at Shen Fei suddenly changed, full of contempt. As a die-hard fan of Captain America, Coulson was already calm at this moment because he did not draw his gun and point it at Shen Fei when someone insulted Captain America like this. At the same side, Melinda, Fury's eyes also changed. Don't look at me like that. I have great respect for the captain. It's just that I heard this information from someone else. If he knows I leaked it, it'll be hard to get any more information from them. I have to compensate him with some kind of material, and there aren't many things they'd be interested in on Earth. The looks from the three men prompted Shen Fei to hastily explain. Just as their expressions softened slightly, Shen Fei suddenly tapped the table in front of him, a meaningful smile on his face. He continued, besides, who told you the captain was dead? The captain is still alive. Fury and the other three couldn't help but tremble with excitement, even Fury, the king of agents. Although Melinda wasn't a fan of the captain, she had to remember who brought her up. Melinda had earned such high trust in S.H.I.E.L.D. because she was raised by Carter. Carter and the captain's relationship was well known. This news, 100 kilograms of vibranium shouldn't be expensive. Shen Fei finally breathed a sigh of relief when he saw the three men's gazes were no longer filled with disdain. This lie was not easy to fabricate. But not all of this was false. Shen Fei had considered sharing Captain's information with Fury, Coulson, and the others for free. But he figured keeping S.H.I.E.L.D's vibranium would benefit Hydra, so the idea of a deal came into play. It would take years for Captain to be discovered, since Tony hadn't become Iron Man yet. But considering Captain had been trapped in the iceberg, Shen Fei decided to let him out for some fresh air. Whether it would scare Hydra wasn't a concern for him. Okay, I don't want the vibranium anymore. At worst, I won't get any more information from them. It's useless to me anyway, and they don't know the exact location. They just happened to pass through Antarctica and saw Captain. You can use the flight path of Captain's plane back then to deduce it. At most, it would be a waste of manpower and resources to search for him. Shen Fei said this with a desperate look. Director, Coulson's eyes were fixed on Fury, like those of a captivated man and woman. I understand. Goodbye. With that, the three of them immediately returned to Trident headquarters in secret. Director, Coulson urged impatiently as Fury returned to his office. Calm down, Coulson. The intelligence hasn't been confirmed yet. Melinda hurriedly grabbed Coulson. I'll take someone there. Unfortunately, Coulson ignored his thoughts. I understand. Hill, come over, Fury said, calling Hill over. Hill, a level 9 agent, was in charge of information processing. We've got it. Using simulations on S.H.I.E.L.D. supercomputers, Fury and his team quickly confirmed the circumstances of Captain's plane crash and the approximate location. Howard had searched for Captain's remains for years, but in the end, he only found the Tesseract, not the body. It wasn't that Howard hadn't tried hard. The reason they couldn't find Captain's plane was, first, due to the limitations of technology at the time, and second, due to glacial conditions. Furthermore, the Tesseract was found at the bottom of the ocean, so Howard and Carter also believed that Captain had been buried there, and so they stopped the search. The Tesseract that crashed into the ocean floor can be found, but the Captain can't. This is because the Tesseract releases energy, something the Captain couldn't do. Back then, the Captain's plane crashed directly into the deep underground ice. Antarctica's vastness made it difficult to find. However, over the years, global warming has thinned the glaciers, and modern technology has enabled exploration deeper underground. That's why the captain was finally found. Antarctica was experiencing the period of midnight daylight, which made life much easier for Carlson, who led the team. Search thoroughly. Don't miss a single inch, Carlson barked orders to the agents as they began their work. They didn't know what to look for, they simply had to find something unusual. Nearly 30 Quinjets and over 200 action team agents, that was the authority Fury gave Carlson. It was a significant number of people, but given the vastness of Antarctica, even determining a rough range would be a drop in the bucket. It was too cold, and coupled with the occasional snowstorms, it was still no progress after 2 weeks. By this point, most of the agents were already complaining, and the search had become perfunctory. Even with S.H.I.E.L.D strict rules, there was no effective solution to the current situation. The only one who remained uncomplaining was Carlson, who had been personally on the front lines since day one. Despite Carlson's repeated requests for help from Fury had his own difficulties. Sending so many people, wasting so much time, to find someone who was already confirmed dead, even as the director of S.H.I.E.L.D, he faced numerous obstacles, questions from the UN Security Council and inquiries from peers. Is S.H.I.E.L.D too much money to waste searching for someone who was already dead, was the Security Council's justification. Of course, the exact words weren't used. After all, Captain America had already been portrayed as a hero. If word got out, would he still want to be in office? No way, they haven't found it yet. Do we have to wait until then? Shen Fei had also received multiple calls from Carlson. They weren't trying to verify the intelligence, but rather to help confirm the specific location, even if it was a small one. But the problem was, could Shen Fei actually do it? If he could, he'd go dig up the captain himself. 2 weeks later. Carlson, give up. The director's already buckling under pressure. This intelligence might be fake, Melinda, tightly wrapped, pleaded beside Carlson. No, we can't let him lie here any longer, Carlson said, ignoring Melinda and continuing his investigation. As for the other agents, their work fell even further behind. Perhaps it was a sign of goodwill, or perhaps Carlson's faith had touched the gods, but the instrument in Carlson's hand suddenly began to flash red. There's something here, Carlson immediately discarded, picked up a manuscript, and began to break the ice. Melinda immediately stepped forward to help. Come and help, the other agents nearby immediately called for help. We've found it. As the ice broke apart, a plane, trapped beneath the ice, emerged. It was the plane from which Captain and Red Skull fought their final battle. Carlson remembered it vividly. Captain, Carlson rushed into the frozen plane, immediately catching sight of the frozen captain's insignia up ahead, the star-shaped shield. Nick, the council has issued an ultimatum. It's better to have them withdraw. That way there's still room for maneuver, Pierce said earnestly in Fury's office. Pierce didn't care whether Captain's body was found or not. Even if they were, it was just a dead body. Just as Fury was about to say something, Hill suddenly walked in. Upon seeing Pierce, he smiled and nodded. We found it. Captain's still alive, Hill said excitedly. Did we? Fury closed his eyes and took several deep breaths, seemingly trying to calm his excitement, but in reality, he was contemplating Shen Fei's situation. Fury's support for Carlson's operation this time was not only partly due to finding Captain, but also partly due to verifying the authenticity of Shen Fei's intelligence. As the king of spies, Fury wasn't prone to such exasperation. After hearing what Hill said, Pierce's smile froze, but he regained his composure after a moment. So what if he was found? He's just an old man, and in this way, maybe, the captain's significance is not only symbolic, but also practical. After all, he's the first successful enhanced person, and the enhancement of the Red Skull is not considered a success. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 Berserker's Staff, Part 1. Thank you so much for this. The director asked me to give this to you, Carlson, with a grateful look on his face, pushed a box toward Shen Fei. We don't have a lot of vibranium in S.H.I.E.L.D. 100 kilograms is far too much? This is the maximum the director can provide, a total of 25 kilograms of vibranium, exactly 1/4. Captain America's discovery, and his presence alive, meant a great deal to Kelson. It's all your credit that we were able to find him. I was just talking, sometimes a piece of information is more important than anything else. After a brief greeting, Kelson hurried away. It was clear that Captain America's discovery, alive and well, in his youthful state, had a profound impact on S.H.I.E.L.D. However, precisely because of this, Captain America's discovery remained largely unreported. If Captain America had been found dead, there would have been widespread publicity and mourning, but if he was alive, the situation would have been kept low-key. It's safe to say that if it weren't for the Battle of New York, Captain America would have remained hidden. Carter, after Kelson left, Shen Fei didn't immediately check on the vibranium. Instead, he pondered Carter's situation. The young captain and the old Carter, they'd missed an era. It's such a shame for this pair to miss each other like this. Perhaps we can help them, Shen Fei said, glancing at the drinks on the table beside him. While S.H.I.E.L.D. was looking for Captain, he hadn't been idle, fully researching the stairway to the sun, the G-Virus, and other viruses obtained from Umbrella. William Platinum was undoubtedly a genius. The G-Virus, if you ignore the uncontrollable mutations, is arguably the best virus. The G-Virus, the G, stands for God. Creating a new human race was William Platinum's ambition. As expected of someone who, along with Wesker, had killed his mentor, Marcus, their ideas were so similar. Spencer, Wesker, and William Platinum all had this desire to become gods, leaving Shen Fei speechless. A true human never considered themselves gods, but any human thought they could become one. The Ancient One was once considered a god. William Platinum couldn't control the G-Virus's mutation, but Shen Fei, with the power of the opera fruit, could. After completing the full version of the G-Virus, Shen Fei faced two options. One was direct injection, similar to the Captain Serum injection, to immediately acquire the G-Virus's abilities. The other was ingestion, creating a beverage or tea-like substance, allowing the body to gradually acquire the G-Virus abilities. The first option was convenient, while the second was time-consuming. While the first was the easiest method for most people, it had a drawback for Kamar-Taj mages, the purity of the soul. While the soul can repair the body can also influence the soul. While this approach would be unnecessary for most people, it's a crucial consideration for Kamar-Taj mages. In the original novel, Wesker ultimately collapsed after being injected with multiple viruses, transforming into a gigantic monster. This was generally assumed to be due to Wesker's body reaching its viral tolerance limit. However, from another perspective, it could be argued that Wesker's soul was no longer pure due to the multiple viruses injected, leading to his collapse. Of course, this isn't unsolvable. Kamar-Taj's magic involves absorbing dimensional energy, strengthening one's soul, enabling the use of magic and potentially extending life. Soul purification isn't impossible for Kamar-Taj's mages, but it requires immense strength. Kamar-Taj prohibits the absorption of dark energy because it's too corrosive for the soul, unlike the side effects of normal dimensional spaces. However, if one possesses sufficient strength to combat the dark forces, it can be absorbed, but achieving this is exceedingly difficult. The Ancient One was able to do so, but precisely because of this, he became even more aware of the power of the dark forces, hence the prohibition against contact with them. After absorbing the dark forces, Caecilius's strength increased immensely, but he himself became a slave to them. For Shen Fei, who doesn't need a rush to increase his strength, the second, gentler method is more appropriate. The first method directly enhances strength, but it requires time to purify the soul. Matter in the material world can be explained from the perspective of the soul. For example, taking medication or eating food theoretically affects the soul, but these effects are quickly purified by the human's own abilities. The body feeds back the soul, and the soul feeds back the body. If this thing were sold, it would be priceless. Having created the complete version of the G-Virus, Shen Fei naturally also created a derivative that could grant eternal youth. The principle is the same as for viral enhancement, but because of its single ability, it's simpler. However, claiming this thing can grant eternal youth is an exaggeration. It can only be said to significantly slow aging. After all, it's not the real G-Virus. Is this vibranium? Its properties are somewhat similar to gold, except its properties are far stronger. It could be considered an enhanced version of gold, because he needed to create the Ant-Man suit. Shen Fei had some knowledge of the properties of some metals. Vibranium is incredibly powerful, no wonder it's so expensive. Considering the similarities between Black Panther's suit and Ant-Man's, vibranium is the perfect choice for Ant-Man's suit. Of course, vibranium has more uses than just that. It's practically all based on vibranium, but Shen Fei has no expertise in this area. I want to help Carter, but where he is a problem. Looks like I'll have to trouble Ada again. As the former head of S.H.I.E.L.D, Carter's residence is top secret. I wonder what Ada is working on right now. Deep in a deserted forest in Norway, Ada, dressed casually and carrying a backpack, compared her map with her hands and flipped through a book. She changed direction again, and after several more changes, she stopped beside a seemingly ordinary tree. Looks like this is it, Ada said, putting down her backpack and taking out her tools. She cut down the tree, then split it in half. Finally, she found a strange metal short stick inside. It's real. Ada looked at the stick with a look of surprise as her portable chainsaw completely destroyed it. She knew the quality of her tools very well, but it hadn't left a single mark on the stick. It seems you can't touch it. Just as Ada's hand was about to touch the staff, she suddenly seemed to remember Shen Fei's warning. After a moment's hesitation, Ada finally gave up on the mysterious metal staff. After storing it in a bag, she scanned the surrounding area and immediately set it on fire. While this was somewhat unkind to the national park, there was no easier way to avoid detection than setting it on fire. At most, it could be dismissed as a forest fire. Furthermore, Ada had calculated the ranger's route before setting the fire, allowing her to conceal the secret with minimal damage. Only the insane couple in the original novel would be so eager to publicly declare themselves gods after only obtaining a section of the Berserker's staff. They were indeed gods, but they should be treated with the word jingbing, psychosis, which together meant mental illness. The Berserker's staff used by the Asgardians was not something that ordinary aliens could use. An occasional contact would only cause a few days of general discomfort, but prolonged contact would mean exposing one's own life to power. Even if Calcin didn't deal with them, within a few days, those who came into contact with the Berserker's staff would pay a heavy price, the most direct of which was overdrawn vitality and the accompanying illness. Shen Fei's taking away the Berserker's staff in advance could be said to have saved their lives. Chapter 43 Berserker's Staff, Part 2. You're injured. Shen Fei, having received a notification from Ada, arrived at an ordinary motel and was greeted by Ada's pale face. It's just a minor injury. Ada waved her hand dismissively, but her furrowed brow betrayed her. You broke my ribs, and you call it a minor injury? Why didn't you go to the hospital? Shen Fei examined her, then immediately produced a scalpel in his left hand and, unleashing the power of the operation fruit, excised the injured area. After some treatment, he reattached it to Ada's body. You're still like this? You really should be a doctor, Ada said, her face filled with amazement. I'm a doctor. By the way, what happened? Shen Fei immediately inquired. Someone stole my things. I never thought a doctor could be so capable. Ada immediately revealed the cause of her injury. Ada had been carrying out the 4 tasks Shen Fei had assigned her, prioritizing them. She was particularly concerned about the Berserker staff. A professional's a professional's a professional. Although Shen Fei didn't reveal the title of the book, it was about the myths and legends of Asgard. So Ada had someone research Norse cultists and pagans, and through them, she found a book. It was from the couple in the original novel who sought the Berserker staff. Before Asgard was revealed, its existence was mere legend, unbelievable. The original story's search for the Berserker staff began after Thor's appearance during the Battle of New York. Since Thor existed, Asgard must exist, so perhaps the book's account was true. With this in mind, the couple began their search. After obtaining the book, Ada consulted with several professors and experts in mythology before finding the first Berserker staff. Unexpectedly, while searching for the second Berserker staff, Ada unexpectedly encountered a university professor she had consulted before, Dr. Elliot Randolph. Ada hadn't taken it seriously, dealing with just an ordinary professor. But she paid the price. This seemingly ordinary professor was incredibly powerful, and Ada couldn't defeat him, and her belongings were stolen. After searching high and low for something, it's easy to find, Shen Fei couldn't help but laugh after hearing Ada's story. He knew who this professor was, but because he didn't know his name or where he was, just that he was a professor. There were so many such professors around the world, Shen Fei hadn't looked for him much. But now, he'd found himself. Do you know who he is? Ada noticed Shen Fei's expression. I just know there's this person, but I don't know his identity. Can you find him now? Of course, Ada said, pulling out a tracking device. As a secret agent, her belongings weren't something she could just rob. Aren't you going to chase him? Ada asked curiously, watching Elliot Randolph ahead, carrying a long package, looking around, then quickly getting into his car and driving away. Isn't there still a piece missing? Instead of us searching slowly, why don't we let him lead us? Shen Fei said with a smile from the passenger seat. He knows where it is, so why hasn't he started looking for it until now? Ada asked in surprise. He already hid it, so why would he look for it? Shen Fei turned to look at Ada and said with a smile. What do you mean? Shen Fei's words shocked Ada so much that if she hadn't been wearing her seatbelt, she would have jumped up. As for magic, while that was a bit of a shock to Ada, she already had superpowers. So magic was just magic. After all, there were many legends about magic on Earth. But mythological figures were different. That was Asgard in Norse mythology. Ada had read the book about the Berserker's staff many times in order to find it. Why are you so surprised? The so-called gods can actually be considered aliens. Although Shen Fei said this, it was impossible for Ada to accept it immediately. Okay, let's follow them first. In Ireland, in a church that looked very old, Elliot Randolph quietly walked in and took out the last piece of the Berserker's staff he had hidden there. Where should I hide it? Elliot Randolph muttered to himself as he looked at the 3 pieces of Berserker's staff in his bag. Just hide it with me, Shen Fei and Ada said as they walked out. It's you? After seeing Ada, Elliot Randolph roughly understood what was going on. You are the Asgardian, the Berserker who took this thing? Ada asked immediately after taking a look at Elliot Randolph. What are you talking about? I'm just a professor who is curious about mythology. Ada's words startled Elliot Randolph, and he said with a dry laugh. Okay, don't deny it. I know who you are. I have no interest in you. Just give me the thing. Shen Fei stepped forward and said. This thing shouldn't be there. Perhaps because he thought he could not hide it anymore, Elliot Randolph directly grabbed a section of the Berserker's staff with his hand. After this section of the staff glowed, he connected the other 2 sections of the staff, and instantly formed a complete Berserker's staff, with no visible cross-section at all. Elliot Randolph, who was holding the Berserker's staff, immediately changed his aura. Berserkers of Asgard, this is a church. It is not good to destroy it. Let's go out, it's not too late for you to give up now. Coming to the hillside on one side, Elliot Randolph, holding the Berserker's staff, suddenly thrust the staff into the ground with force. The surrounding ground immediately shook, and half of the staff was directly inserted into the ground. You know, this is a rocky area. The strength is good, but I'm going to keep the staff today, Shen Fei said, making seals with his hands, and then a golden stick appeared in his hand. Be careful. Shen Fei rushed forward as he spoke. Although the opponent was just an ordinary soldier from Asgard, that was in Asgard. Compared with the Earthlings, the opponent was much stronger. Didn't you see that even Aida was not his opponent? In terms of physical fitness, even ordinary people in Asgard are much stronger than the Earthlings. Shen Fei still remembered that Elliot Randolph bent towards a dagger and directly broke the handcuffs in the original book. Only a few people on Earth today can match this power. Dang dang dang. The battle between Shen Fei and Elliot Randolph was completely head-on, without any skills. As the sticks in their hands kept colliding, dazzling sparks kept flashing. At the beginning, Elliot Randolph could still withstand a few head-on hits, but then he was defeated. Well, Elliot Randolph roared, and the Berserker staff in his hand emitted a strange light, and he rushed towards Shen Fei. Has your strength increased a lot? He is still just a stonemason. I really don't know how strong Thor and Loki are. Although Elliot Randolph's strength has increased, he is still no match for Shen Fei. After Shen Fei forced him back with a stick, he turned his hands. And the stick in his hand turned into an iron chain, and then swung it to Elliot Randolph's feet, and then pulled him to the ground, and then the iron chain swung directly to the Berserker staff in his hand, knocking the staff away. There is no problem in beating him, but if you want to fight Thor and the others, you are still far away now. The gap between ordinary people and the royal family of Asgard is a world of difference. The average lifespan in Asgard is 5,000 years, but this only counts ordinary Asgardians. Nobles and royals are not included. Think about how many years Odin has lived, hundreds of thousands to millions of years. Of course, this also has to do with Odin's strength. The stronger he is, the longer he lives. Chapter 44 Berserker's Staff, Part 2. Bang! As Elliot Randolph tried to get up, Shen Fei suddenly pulled out an automatic pistol and shot him in the body. Shen Fei didn't intend to kill him. The bullets in the automatic pistol were made with cobra venom, the same kind of freezing bullets invented by Fitz in the original novel. They wouldn't kill, but they could knock the enemy unconscious. Asgardians are indeed different, Shen Fei said, seeing Elliot Randolph seemed unresponsive. He fired again. After the fourth shot, Elliot Randolph finally collapsed. Let's go. Giving Ada a signal to carry Elliot Randolph, Shen Fei opened the portal, picked up the Berserker staff, and the three of them left. Because the Berserker staff hadn't been analyzed yet, Shen Fei wore gloves when he picked it up. The three of them quickly arrived at the house Ada had previously rented in Ireland. After throwing Elliot Randolph to the floor, Shen Fei took out a syringe and drew a tube of his blood. What are you going to do with him, Ada, sitting on the sofa nearby, asked. I'll release him shortly. That's my main goal. He's just a pleasant surprise, Shen Fei said calmly after putting away the syringe. He wasn't some mad scientist. Even if this person was an Asgardian, what difference did he make? Even if he had the Operation Fruit, he couldn't extend his lifespan to that of an Asgardian. As for other biochemical experiments, he had no interest. He wasn't Spencer, Wesker, or William Platinum. If he had to subject a human to such experiments, even if it was an alien, he wouldn't do it. Runes. Shen Fei then began to examine the Berserker staff. While this was only the most basic Asgardian technology, it was the perfect foundation for Shen Fei's current skills. Rage runes, power runes. Asgard had left a lot of information on Earth, and Shen Fei had been consciously studying it. To ordinary people, this information was useless, but to a mage, it was a powerful force. The magic of Kamar-Taj is incredibly powerful and sophisticated, but this sophistication is based on the very nature of magic, as well as portals and mirror dimensions. Without these, Kamar-Taj's magic is nothing more than a melee fighter wielding blades. Its power is even inferior to modern weaponry, just like how he'd fought Elliot Randolph for ages before, only to be defeated with a few shots. Even the strongest Asgardians couldn't withstand modern weaponry with their physical bodies. For people like Thor and Loki, bombs can only blast them to dust, they can't be harmed. You're awake, you can leave. It's true that the Asgardians are incredibly strong. The poison from the four-gun cobra awoke them quickly. Let me go, the awakened Elliot Randolph asked curiously, surveying his surroundings. Why wouldn't I let you go? Slice and study? I'm not interested in that, Shen Fei said, waving his hand. Are you a mage? Elliot Randolph didn't leave immediately, but instead looked at Shen Fei curiously. Mages are rare not only on Earth but also in Asgard. This profession relies on wisdom, and considering the character of the Asgardians, their scarcity is understandable. Not bad, so giving this to me is much better than keeping it all to yourself, Shen Fei said, holding up the Berserker staff. It's indeed quite good, Elliot Randolph nodded. Elliot Randolph's reason for hiding the Berserker staff was simple, he feared it would cause chaos on Earth. If the chaos was severe enough, Asgard might discover him. Don't forget, Asgard has a guardian deity who can see through the 9 realms. No one in Asgard would care if a Berserker went missing. After all, in Asgard, the Berserker Corps is cannon fodder, anyone who wants to join can sign up. As for combat effectiveness, holding the Berserker staff is combat effectiveness. You're an Asgardian, why are you staying here? Ada seemed very curious about Elliot Randolph, after all, he was a figure from myth and legend. It seems you have some misunderstandings about Asgard. After a moment's silence, Elliot Randolph spoke. In Asgard, I'm just an ordinary stonemason, a man who's worked with stone for thousands of years. I signed up for a draft, came here, and have stayed ever since. Elliot Randolph slowly explained his situation. The reason was simple, in Asgard, he was just an ordinary man, living an ordinary life. But on Earth, things were different. While not a prominent figure, he was not a nobody either. With wealth accumulated over a long period of time, he was a wealthy man on Earth. Any item from back then was an antique. But that wasn't the most important thing. The most important thing was that he was very popular with beautiful women on Earth, which was the main reason he stayed there. Over the years, he had had secret meetings with many women, and even now he still enjoyed this. This was because he had restrained himself in modern society. The Elliot Randolph who stayed on Earth back then, relying on his great power, had become a hero, a petty king, and even owned a crystal palace. To attract the beauty's attention, he recounted his past experiences, including the Berserker's staff. If you were in my shoes, would you return to Asgard? Elliot Randolph asked Ada after finishing his story. On one side was a lowly stonemason, and on the other side were heroes, kings, and wealthy men. What choice was there? He's a time traveler, after all, and a relatively successful one. Unlike Shen Fei, who traveled between worlds, Elliot Randolph traveled between planets. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave. After chatting with Ada for a while longer, Elliot Randolph left. Presumably, upon his return, he would disguise himself once again and hide. This is Asgard. A bit disappointing, although Ada was no historian or theologian, the Asgard she had heard from Elliot Randolph still left her feeling disappointed. The real Asgard was vastly different from the one she had imagined. He's just a lowly stonemason in Asgard. How much can you expect him to know, not to mention the rigid hierarchy of Asgard? Even in modern society, if you asked him to reveal state secrets, he would surely be unaware. I didn't expect you to find this so quickly. Follow me, Shen Fei said, opening the portal again and returning to his home in New York. This is a strengthening potion. It strengthens the body and accelerates injury recovery. Of course, the specific effects vary from person to person. Even the same strengthening potion can produce vastly different effects depending on individual physical conditions, personality, and other factors. Of course, Shen Fei also pointed out the drawbacks of taking strengthening potions. How long does the automatic soul cleansing you mentioned take? After learning the two methods of administration, Ada pondered for a moment and asked. I'm not sure. It varies from person to person, but it'll take at least a few years. Then I'll choose the first option. Direct injection for increased strength was Ada's choice. For an agent, it was a safe method. As for the soul, Ada didn't need to consider it as far as Shen Fei did. Yes, Shen Fei nodded. If you want to better utilize the effect of the potion, exercise is indispensable. It doesn't mean that after taking the strengthening potion, you can become stronger by just sitting still. The effect of the potion needs to be stimulated. For ordinary people, exercise is the way to stimulate the potion's ability. When the captain was injected with a strengthening serum, if half of New York's electricity had not been used to stimulate it, he could only exercise slowly, instead of instantly transforming from a skinny young man into a muscular young man with 8-pack abs. Next, it's time to study the runes carefully. Chapter 45 Dimensional Crossing, Part 1. Ada's Raccoon is truly a magical artifact. Before Ada left, Shen Fei borrowed it to examine it, then used a 3D printer to create one. It's true that 3D printers have made many things much simpler, especially in laboratories, where they've significantly improved efficiency. Stark's ability to produce so many Mark Series Iron Man suits so quickly is all thanks to 3D printers. 3D printers are so amazing that, with enough materials and the blueprints, making an Ant-Man suit is a snap. In Spider-Man, Far From Home, Peter Parker used a 3D printer to quickly create his new spider suit. Of course, a 3D printer of this quality is incredibly expensive, costing at least tens of millions of dollars, and potentially even hundreds of millions. Among the items Shen Fei had borrowed previously was a small 3D printer, but now he has 2 large ones and 4 medium-sized ones, all inherited from Wesker. To put it simply, if you have the blueprints for a Quinjet, you can create one in minutes. Creating other things is even easier. Take figurines, for example. A 3D printer worth tens of millions of dollars can definitely create a life-size, exquisite figurine. Of course, no one would use something worth tens of millions of dollars for this. This kind of thing is practically a standard feature of top scientists. The Pickham family owns a small, yet incredibly precise 3D printer, and unsurprisingly, his Ant-Man and Wasp suits were both created using it. Done. Looking at the vibranium-infused black Ant-Man suit, Shen Fei couldn't help but pump his fist excitedly. This Ant-Man suit was created by fusing the Ant-Man, Black Panther, and Spider-Man suits based on his memories, after running Red Queen's algorithms through multiple iterations. It's undeniable that since Red Queen came along, his work efficiency has greatly improved. He can even teach her how to fuse and mix materials. Shen Fei doesn't have a powerful portable power source like Stark's arc reactor, otherwise he could create the Iron Man suit in minutes. Constructing an Iron Man suit has never been a difficult task. Stark could easily make one by hand in a cave, let alone in a modern society with its vast array of modern technology. Aerospace Discovery has been researching and producing numerous Iron Man suits, but without a solution to the energy problem, any Iron Man suit is nothing more than a pile of scrap metal. After the advent of the arc reactor, even Justin Hammer could produce a fleet of Iron Man suits. The reason Iron Man suits haven't appeared in large numbers since the advent of the arc reactor is because of another issue: artificial intelligence. To become Iron Man, both the arc reactor and the AI are essential. Without energy, the Iron Man suit can't move, and without the AI, it can't fight, relying on manual aiming. For Stark, remotely controlling the Iron Man suit from his villa is the ultimate way to fight. This frees up space for carrying more weapons. The reason Stark doesn't do this is simply to show off and gain attention. Without credence, what's the difference between a person and a nobody? Stark has perfected this. You've finally made up your mind to move out of that shabby house of yours. Stark surveyed Shen Fei's new villa with a look of disdain. The new villa was already incredibly luxurious, but in Stark's eyes, it looked completely unappealing. Today was Shen Fei's housewarming celebration, and Stark had unexpectedly shown up. Though his demeanor gave no sign of congratulating Shen Fei. In the world of capital, money can solve many problems. Pepper had found the villa quickly. Shen Fei had held off moving until today because it was undergoing renovations. To accommodate Red Queen's large container servers, a large basement was necessary. Besides the basement, a large arc reactor was also needed. This wasn't built for nothing, it was purchased from the Stark Corporation at market value. The construction of large arc reactors was a significant source of revenue for the Stark Corporation. Of course, mine can't compare to yours, but since you have so much free time, why don't you consider improving the arc reactor and making it smaller? Shen Fei looked at Stark helplessly. Stark Corporation had been seeking external help. The shrinking of the arc reactor was incredibly difficult. Abadi Aston had gathered numerous scientists to improve it, but to no avail. But thinking of Tony in the cave, hammering away and shrinking the arc reactor to the size of a palm, it was clear it wasn't that Tony couldn't improve it, but that he simply didn't want to. I'm very busy. There's so much free time, Stark said with a smile, lounging on a poolside lounge chair. A luxurious villa with a swimming pool, something Shen Fei had once only dreamed of, was now a reality. Busy picking up girls, Shen Fei kept silent with Pepper beside him. Well, it's rare for me to come so early to congratulate you on your move and bring you a gift. Why don't you get cooking? Unaccustomed to Western cuisine, Shen Fei cooked whenever he could. Combined with the power of the Operation Fruit, Shen Fei's cooking skills rivaled those of some Michelin-starred restaurants. His dishes were truly delicious, practically luminous. After Tony had his first meal, he'd come over for a quick bite. Chinese cuisine has long since spread across the globe. While many have undergone some dramatic changes, generally speaking, opening a Chinese restaurant in the West is a sure bet. Chinese takeout is incredibly popular in New York, just as pizza is. Of course, Shen Fei couldn't get used to the Chinese food there, just as he couldn't understand why tea would have milk and sugar in it. How could he possibly drink it? It wasn't coffee. Wait a minute, Shen Fei said, and went to cook. This time, Stark had indeed given him a nice gift, a holographic imaging system. Stark hadn't known he had artificial intelligence. He'd given it to Shen Fei so he could watch movies and improve his bedroom. Shen Fei had originally planned to get the system from Quentin Beck, who had been fired by Stark Enterprises, but now he didn't need it. Quentin Beck, the Mysterio, had caused quite a stir after Iron Man's death, but now he was just a scientist fired by Stark Enterprises. The Marvel Universe boasts many brilliant scientists, including Quentin Beck, who invented the holographic imaging system. This system was the reason he was fired from Stark Enterprises. After inventing the holographic imaging system, Beck became extremely arrogant, even boasting in front of Stark. Even when Stark pointed out the system's instability, he dismissed it as Stark's jealousy of his talent, and was fired. The holographic imaging system was indeed impressive, even embarrassing Spider-Man, but that was years later. Today's holographic images are incredibly unstable, not only for gaming but also for Hollywood special effects. Tony Stark's family and Shen Fei's holographic imaging system were able to utilize it, but they relied on other equipment to compensate for its shortcomings. Large-scale deployment of the holographic imaging system is simply impossible. For another thing, the price of the holographic imaging system alone, combined with the other equipment, is beyond the reach of most people. While Tony may be sharp-tongued and arrogant, he possesses a rigorous approach to science. Unfortunately, Quentin Beck didn't believe any of this, believing Tony was jealous of his talent and secretly researching holographic imaging systems. He had also contacted several problematic former Stark employees to form an anti-Stark alliance. Of course, this alliance was a joke. Furthermore, they were unaware that they were being targeted by Shen Fei. If the timing was right, Shen Fei wouldn't mind eliminating this so-called mysterious man. The reason he held off on this was because these people were still useful. Although they had been expelled from Stark, they were leaders in their respective fields. If it weren't for the confidentiality restrictions, countless people in the same industry would be eager to hire them. The best option was to eliminate them after they had fully exploited their potential. Chapter 46 Dimensional Crossing, Part 2. You know, this time I'm going to invent a really powerful bomb. It only needs one use to maintain world peace. After dinner, by the pool, Stark excitedly introduced his latest weapon. Iron Man is about to appear, Shen Fei thought to himself, watching the excited Stark. Although Stark hadn't yet named the weapon, as soon as he described its function and power, Shen Fei knew what it was, the Jericho missile, the very thing that had led Stark to become Iron Man. Why are you selling arms? For world peace. In a way, Stark shared this sentiment. Weapons are meant to deter. Just like after the advent of nuclear weapons, while local wars have continued, large-scale wars have largely ceased, especially between countries with nuclear weapons. Unfortunately, Stark's idea was good, but the other directors of Stark Group didn't share the same view, especially his uncle. Small-scale conflicts continued around the world, and some of them were deliberately instigated by certain individuals. What a joke. You all want peace, and I'm selling weapons to the devil. Shen Fei wasn't prepared to intervene in Stark's becoming Iron Man. After all, if he intervened, Iron Man would be gone, which would be a huge problem. Secondly, he had his own priorities, no less important than Stark becoming Iron Man. Although he was quite powerful, Shen Fei had always shied away from the idea of becoming a superhero. He wasn't as great as Iron Man or Spider-Man, especially not the kind of person who risked their lives to save others, only to be blamed by those they saved. Shen Fei wasn't as magnanimous as Iron Man and the others. He could help when he could, but not risking his life. Speaking of this, Shen Fei greatly admired Spider-Man. Spider-Man never used his abilities to seek personal gain. Instead, he lived in poverty, even sacrificing his love for them. This made Shen Fei, who had always used his abilities for personal gain, feel a little ashamed. Of course, despite the shame, he would continue to seek benefits when they were needed. If Spider-Man had the power of the opope fruit, he would probably want to cure every incurable disease on Earth. Solomon's Key, the Great Grimoire, a new account of hell, a new account of the world, a general introduction to dimensions, the invisible sun, the Book of Cagliostro. After that, Shen Fei, aside from occasional experiments, devoted himself to studying the magic book stored on the tablet computer he'd stored in Kamar-Taj. After completing his vibranium Ant-Man suit, Shen Fei entertained the idea of traversing dimensions. While it was dangerous, there were some worlds he couldn't avoid simply because they were dangerous. Humans are strange creatures. Back then, Shen Fei's greatest dream was to sleep until he woke naturally, count money until his hands cramped, live in a villa with a pool, and throw swimsuit balls. Now that his goal was almost within reach, he could theoretically emulate Stark and lead a dissolute life. However, the reality was that he hadn't found a woman. Hell and heaven existed in the Marvel Universe. Angels from heaven used to occasionally appear, but now heaven's miracles had long since faded. However, individuals from hell occasionally returned, like the Ghost Rider on a motorcycle. Fortunately, these two dimensions were inaccessible to ordinary humans. Some dimensional worlds are inherently repulsive, making them inaccessible without a certain level of strength. Heaven and hell are like this. So Dormammu isn't beyond time. I'm here to negotiate. This is how Doctor Strange defeated Dormammu. Many have long believed that Dormammu transcends time, including Shen Fei. The reason for this is that the Book of Cagliostro discusses this issue. Dormammu isn't beyond time. If he were, he wouldn't have been trapped in Doctor Strange's time loop. The reason Dormammu can sense time loops and Doctor Strange doesn't use them against Thanos is because Dormammu and Thanos are different beings. The Book of Cagliostro defines time in both the narrow and broad sense. The narrow sense refers to the time of a particular world, while the broad sense involves the infinite universe. There's only one concept in this sense. However, this explains why Dormammu can sense time loops, because Dormammu is a being from another dimension, whose timeline differs from ours. 1 second in this world could be a year in another. This is somewhat similar to quantum space travel. No matter how much time has passed since traveling back in time, it would only be 5 seconds in today's world. This doesn't mean that a person traveling from one world to another is no longer governed by the time there. If that were the case, and Shen Fei were one of those beings, then he wouldn't be governed by the time of this world either. How could that be possible? Dormammu can perceive time loops because he is a dimensional being, a dark dimension in his own right. His body on Earth is only a portion of his larger body, so he is governed by the time of this world while also being able to perceive the looping of time. It's like someone watching an endlessly looping video. The person inside the video can't detect the video's endless looping, but the person watching can. The person watching and the person inside the video are in two different dimensions. Dormammu has placed part of his body inside the endlessly looping video, while the rest of his body remains the person watching. Shen Fei couldn't help but admire Strange. He deserves to be the next Sorcerer Supreme. During that endlessly looping period, he died countless times. As a dimensional being, Dormammu's concept of time differs significantly from Strange's. Despite this, Strange ultimately persevered until Dormammu impatiently retreated. Imagine how many times he died, a feat far beyond what the film could convey. This also demonstrates the power of the Time Stone, allowing Strange to transcend timelines within his own world, becoming both the person in the video and the person watching it. Thank goodness I have the Pym particles, otherwise I wouldn't dare do this. Shen Fei wasn't just recklessly rushing in, doing so would be playing with his own life. He did so with a certain level of confidence, rooted in Dr. Hank Pym's Pym particles. Dimensional space is similar to quantum space, it's difficult to discern direction within it, but with the Pym particles, things are different. I don't know if I can come back again, or when I can. Forget it, now is not the time to dwell on these external things. After preparing everything he could and hiding everything he could, Shen Fei activated his Ant-Man suit, transforming himself into a quantum state. Then, he opened a portal and plunged into the dimensional space. What a colorful world! The situation around him was just like the dimensional space that Ancient One had brought his soul into before. For the Wasp, once she entered the quantum space, she could not get out. However, for Shen Fei, this problem did not exist. Chapter 47 Dumbledore and Grindelwald, Part 1. I thought I could choose any world I wanted, but it turns out it's all just luck. Only after truly entering the dimensional space did Shen Fei understand why dimensional exploration is so dangerous. There's nothing wrong with the multiverse or the infinite universe, but the vast majority of these worlds are empty nothingness. Finding a living world within these vast dimensional spaces is, to a certain extent, a matter of luck. Finally, I've stumbled upon one. After countless hours in the dimensional space, dodging countless dangers, Shen Fei finally spotted a living world ahead. A zigzag sound. Then, Shen Fei felt like he was back in Kamar-Taj, learning magic. Only a few sparks flickered on his hands. It looked like opening the portal to the world ahead would take some time. I finally understand Dormammu must be summoned to appear on Earth. The dimensional barrier is incredibly strong. In theory, jumping from one universe to another is extremely difficult. Large creatures find it especially difficult to breach this barrier. Conversely, smaller creatures can easily pierce it, just like the dimensional monsters Star-Lord and his companions fought at the beginning of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. I wonder what kind of world this will be. After finally opening the portal, Shen Fei immediately passed through. As soon as he stepped out of the portal, Shen Fei felt his body plummeting. Shit, Shen Fei cursed inwardly, looking at his position, about 100 meters above the ground. He then attempted to use the portal to land safely, but his expression suddenly changed. The portal's magic hadn't worked at all. Fortunately, Shen Fei reacted quickly, activating his Ant-Man suit and shrinking himself. Bang! About 20 meters above the ground, Shen Fei felt as if his body collided with an invisible barrier and was immediately flung away. After bouncing several times on this invisible barrier, Shen Fei finally landed, feeling dizzy. What the hell is this? Shen Fei, his body back to normal and his mask removed, stared with confusion at the ancient castle atop the hill not far ahead. It was a dark, gloomy, and somewhat dilapidated castle. This is a protective shield. Shen Fei pressed his palm against the empty space in front of him, feeling a squeeze that surprised him greatly. Young man, this isn't the place for you. At that moment, a strange, somewhat elderly voice suddenly rang out from the side. It startled Shen Fei, and he immediately turned in the direction of the voice. He saw a tall, thin old man with waist-length silver hair and a long silver beard. He wore a strange white robe and held a strange wooden stick, staring at him silently. "Who are you?" After a moment's silence, Shen Fei pulled out a desert eagle from Ant-Man's suit and asked. "Expelliarmus." The old man suddenly pointed his stick at Shen Fei. Shen Fei then felt a powerful force radiate from the desert eagle, causing him to involuntarily release his grip. "I'm Dumbledore," the old man finally spoke. "Excuse me, Dumbledore. Is this the world of Harry Potter?" "That's a wand." Shen Fei was immediately stunned by Dumbledore's name. "Dumbledore, the headmaster of Hogwarts?" Shen Fei asked after a long silence. "This isn't the place for you." Dumbledore stared into Shen Fei's eyes for a long moment, then pointed his wand at him again, as if about to cast a spell. Faced with this situation, Shen Fei didn't care about revealing his identity. He quickly formed hand seals, and a 2-meter diameter golden magic shield appeared before him. Without a portal to use, and facing Dumbledore, Shen Fei had no intention of hiding his strength. "Wait a minute, I don't know where this is. I just stumbled here by accident," Shen Fei said from behind the magic shield, pulling out his desert eagle again. "This isn't a place you can stumble into by accident." Dumbledore's brow furrowed at Shen Fei's miraculous golden magic shield. He could tell it was magic, but it was certainly something he had never seen before. As the headmaster of Hogwarts, he was well versed in the wizarding world, but this was a completely new kind of magic. "I was transported here by a teleportation error, I believe you, but this place can't be exposed, so I need to cast an Oblivia charm on you." "Don't worry, it's just to make you forget everything here," Dumbledore said, staring into Shen Fei's eyes. "I'm sorry, but I won't accept any magic that involves memory," Shen Fei said, pulling out a box from his pocket. He opened it, pulled out a micro-missile, and after placing it on the ground, immediately restored it to its original state. "I know I'm no match for you, but I'm not without my own means. You should know what this thing is," Shen Fei said, while internally cursing his bad luck. This world was Harry Potter's, a perfect place for him, perfect for making up for the shortcomings of Kamar-Taj's magic system. The magic of Harry Potter's world might not be as impressive in terms of attack, but it was magical enough. But facing Dumbledore right away was something he had never expected. "I know. It's a Muggle weapon, banned by the Ministry of Magic." As someone dedicated to maintaining peace between the wizarding and ordinary worlds, Dumbledore naturally knew what Shen Fei had brought out. "I promise not to leak information about what's going on here. How about we just go our separate ways? Is that thing so powerful? It's making you so wary." At that moment, another, somewhat aged voice echoed. Shen Fei turned to see an elderly man, looking very pale and ragged, yet possessing a certain air of distinction, appear on the other side of the protective barrier. "It's a weapon comparable to a major spell," Dumbledore explained. "Muggles are now capable of crafting such terrifying weapons. One day, the Muggles you protect will destroy the wizarding world." The elderly man's expression darkened at Dumbledore's words. Dumbledore fell silent. "Come in and chat? By the way, I'm Grindelwald," the old man said, turning his gaze towards Shen Fei. Holy crap, the old man's introduction made Shen Fei take a step back. At this moment, he finally understood why Dumbledore had erased his memory. This place turned out to be the place where the Dark Lord Grindelwald was imprisoned. Dumbledore certainly didn't want to let it out. Just like Voldemort had Death Eaters, Grindelwald also had followers. Once this place was leaked, it was conceivable that Grindelwald's followers would definitely come here to kill him. If it was a demon like Voldemort, Dumbledore could just kill him directly, but Grindelwald was his lover, so of course he couldn't kill him. Okay, after a moment's silence, Shen Fei nodded and agreed to Grindelwald's proposal. With Dumbledore here, if there was a portal, it would be easy to deal with. Without a portal, there would be nowhere to run. Kamar-Taj's teleportation magic has a weakness that is not a weakness. That is, if you change the world, you must re-establish the dimension before you can use it. Chapter 48 Dumbledore and Grindelwald, Part 2. Nurmengard, the castle Shen Fei had seen earlier, was also the prison where Grindelwald was imprisoned. Built during Grindelwald's subversive era, it served as a gathering place for Grindelwald's followers. In this respect, Grindelwald was significantly stronger than Voldemort. Voldemort lacked even a base of his own, and his Death Eaters had to borrow the Malfoy family's manor for meetings. Am I lucky, or unlucky? Shen Fei muttered to himself as Grindelwald and Dumbledore ascended to the upper floors, seemingly discussing something. Although Dumbledore wasn't present, Shen Fei had no intention of escaping. Nurmengard was surrounded by a protective barrier, and without teleportation, he couldn't outrun Dumbledore. Shen Fei wasn't particularly worried about his own safety. Dumbledore generally didn't kill without permission, he feared the memory charm the most. Soon, Dumbledore and Grindelwald descended from the upper level. They stood on either side, forming a triangle with Shen Fei on the other side. "Can you tell me about your origins?" Grindelwald asked first. "I'm Oriental." There was a glitch in the teleportation. Shen Fei recounted the story of his recovery. He said he came from another world, a fact he absolutely couldn't reveal, at least not yet. Furthermore, with his Oriental appearance, passing himself off as Chinese wasn't impossible, but it wouldn't withstand scrutiny. However, if you were Oriental, the situation would be different. The wizarding world rarely interacted with the outside world. Hogwarts, while renowned worldwide, was merely a school of magic in England. It wouldn't be possible for them to know if he existed in the Eastern wizarding world. Anyone else would have been instantly exposed in the presence of Dumbledore, a master of legilimency. But Shen Fei wasn't afraid of his legilimency. The magic of Kamar-Taj was highly resistant to such abilities. "You should know that wizards are not allowed to use ordinary people's belongings," Dumbledore said. "I understand, but I think this rule is completely unreasonable. Perhaps it wouldn't have mattered 100 years ago, but now, it will ultimately bring ruin to the wizarding world." Shen Fei knew the disagreement between Dumbledore and Grindelwald. He simply had to cater to their wishes. At all costs, he absolutely couldn't let Dumbledore cast the Obliviate charm on him, or he might end up living as an ordinary person for the rest of his life. Theoretically, with Shen Fei's current strength, a standard Obliviate charm wouldn't work on him. Even if it did, his memory would quickly return. But Dumbledore was different. "You should be aware that the wizarding world's living space is shrinking, and with the continuous advancement of technology, the possibility of exposure is increasing. Only by understanding the belongings of ordinary people can we better protect the wizarding world." Shen Fei's words made Grindelwald nod with some relief. "This will cause a war between the wizarding world and ordinary people." What Grindelwald agreed to, Dumbledore naturally disagreed with. This was the main point of their disagreement back then. Hasn't this war already broken out once? Both sides managed to get through it safely that time, but if it happens again, we might not be so lucky. Without waiting for Dumbledore to speak, Shen Fei continued, "Don't claim you've been trying to avoid war. The wizarding world is simply running away. It's been avoiding it for 1,000 years. How much longer? 100 years, 200 years. One day, the wizarding world will no longer be hiding, and war will begin." "You're less insightful than a child. If you and I had joined forces, we could have changed everything," Grindelwald said excitedly. "Many people would have died. Too many already died back then. That would have been better than the complete demise of the wizarding world." Dumbledore and Grindelwald fell silent. Both were top figures in the wizarding world, and their convictions were naturally unwavering. It was precisely because of this that they had dueled. "I believe everything will get better in the future." After a long pause, Dumbledore once again drew his wand. "Getting better is a ridiculous idea. You told me that back then. Now tell me what has changed." After Shen Fei took a few steps back, Grindelwald stepped between Shen Fei and Dumbledore. "Over the years, the only thing that's changed is the weapons of ordinary people. The wizarding world doesn't interact with the ordinary world, yet they imagine a future of friendly communication between the two sides. Isn't that ridiculous? If you really want to change, you should slowly tell ordinary people about the wizarding world. Let them know about the ordinary world, instead of using the Oblivion charm for every problem." When the East and the West first came into contact, what was the trigger? War. Although many people died back then, at least both sides can now communicate on an equal footing. How can they communicate without letting ordinary people know about the wizarding world? Shen Fei's words made Dumbledore hesitate. In terms of magic, Dumbledore's knowledge was dozens of blocks ahead of Shen Fei, but in some concepts, Shen Fei was several blocks ahead of Dumbledore. His reading of Romance of the Three Kingdoms, Lecture Room, Various Schools of Thought, and Shang Shu wasn't in vain, even though he'd initially acquired this knowledge entirely thanks to Qin's Moon. While these were merely general principles, few would have paid much attention in Shen Fei's previous life. This world presented a fresh perspective. Grindelwald and Dumbledore both sought to change the status quo of the wizarding world. As rare individuals possessing the highest levels of wisdom, they saw things beyond the reach of ordinary people. Most wizards considered it unfounded that ordinary people, muggles, could ever harm wizards. They were content with their superiority, even with the International Confederation of Wizards, which protected ordinary people. Their perceived superiority was evident in the very terms used in their laws, which referred to ordinary people as muggles. Even in the laws themselves, the term muggle was used. They had completely forgotten the wars between wizards and ordinary people in the Middle Ages, as well as World Wars I and II. In this world, both World Wars I and II were caused by the wizarding world. However, due to his personality, Grindelwald is a radical. He hopes that the wizarding world will seize control of the entire world, so that it doesn't matter if the wizarding world is exposed. Unfortunately, Dumbledore is an idealist. As the personality conflicts between the two grow, the couple goes directly to opposite sides. As the two most powerful people in the wizarding world, both are homosexuals. Such a coincidence is something that only happens once in 100 years or 1,000 years, but they met. In the end, the probability can only be said to be fate. Compared with the Dark Lord Grindelwald, Voldemort is just a powerful terrorist. Wait a minute, I think you misunderstood me. Seeing that Dumbledore was still ready to take action, Shen Fei hurriedly said, "My way of solving the problems of the wizarding world and ordinary people is different from what you think. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 49 Dumbledore and Grindelwald, Part 2. Leave this planet. Dumbledore and Grindelwald were stunned after hearing Shen Fei's so-called plan. That was Shen Fei's plan, indeed. It was simple, yet incredibly drastic. Even Dumbledore and Grindelwald, two of the wizarding world's leading figures, were momentarily at a loss for words. This is merely the final plan. In reality, this era presents the best, and final, opportunity for the wizarding world to integrate into the ordinary world, Shen Fei continued. It's true that in times of crisis, human potential is limitless, just as Iron Man built a miniature arc reactor in a cave and the first-generation Mark armor. Now, while Shen Fei was desperately trying to avoid conflict with Dumbledore, he had actually come up with a number of solutions to the wizarding world's current situation. Leaving this planet was difficult for the wizarding world, but for Shen Fei, obtaining spaceships in a few years wouldn't be a problem. At most, he could provide Dumbledore with one or more. "Why do you think so?" Grindelwald asked gravely. "Because I've seen a glimpse of the future," Shen Fei said calmly. "If we miss this opportunity, there will be a war between the two, and there will be no winners in this war, because it will destroy the planet." Of course, the destruction of the planet was a lie, but the destruction of humanity's living environment was real. In the wizarding world, there are wizards with the power of prophecy. Shen Fei wasn't afraid of being exposed, because he did know some of the future. Furthermore, his soul was strong, so Dumbledore's legitimacy wouldn't work, let alone anyone else. Grindelwald seemed like a prophet, his vision of the future driving him to act without hesitation. You should all be aware of the ultimate weapon of ordinary people. Once a war breaks out, no matter which side loses, the ultimate weapon will be activated, and everyone will perish. We must avoid this. As the saying goes, the barefoot are not afraid of the shod. He was willing to risk his life to dethrone the emperor. There's a reason why major powers prohibit smaller nations from possessing nuclear weapons, especially in countries that are home to terrorists. These people don't care about the interests of all humanity or the human environment. "Tell me what your plan is." Grindelwald didn't ask Shen Fei about the future he envisioned. "It all starts with the current state of the wizarding world," Shen Fei said immediately after a long pause, gathering his thoughts. Fortunately, he had some knowledge of Harry Potter's world, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to fool these two top wizarding figures. This world was different from Marvel. The number of wizards in Kamar-Taj was extremely small, so of course they had to stay hidden. Even if they were exposed later, it wouldn't matter. After all, the power structure in the Marvel world was too complex, with aliens and Protoss appearing, so what would wizards really matter? In Harry's world, wizards were so numerous that they had formed their own society. With so many people, hiding them all was impossible. In fact, in the ordinary world, even high-ranking government officials were aware of the wizarding world. Even the profession of Auror was established to cooperate with the ordinary government, primarily to target wizards who violated taboos. Dark wizards were plentiful in this world, given the limited number of schools, and the extreme exclusion of those schools. Many talented wizards had to rely on self-study. In this regard, Hogwarts can be considered a very open-minded school, even with striling inside. Other schools are even more extreme than Hogwarts. Even America, known as the land of freedom, has only seen a slight improvement in recent years, but only slightly. The way Americans refer to ordinary people, no-maj, reveals that their discrimination against them is even more extreme than in England. Before the changes, American wizards couldn't befriend or marry no-maj, a problem not present in England. If Shen Fei hadn't met Dumbledore early on, he probably would have become a dark wizard, self-taught through various magical books. Age restrictions would have made it impossible for him to attend school. Of course, finding a teacher wasn't difficult for Shen Fei, like that person who is probably still a rat. That's it, basically. We can attack or defend. The worst-case scenario is leaving the planet. At least we won't exterminate wizards or destroy the planet. After a long and eloquent speech, Shen Fei finally finished. Luckily, in his previous life, he'd browsed Harry World's online forums and debated with others about the relative power of magic and technology, like whether a gun could defeat Voldemort. Now, all that knowledge finally came in handy. If he'd said this to anyone else, it would have been like talking to a cow, but it was just right for these two. Of course, I don't have the ability to carry out this plan. What do you think? Grindelwald asked Dumbledore after a long silence. Shen Fei had a lot to say, and even with Grindelwald's wisdom, he needed some thought before he could comprehend it. Well, Dumbledore hesitated. If Shen Fei's plan was to be carried out, even he would have to consider it. You're still hesitating now? Are you really going to wait until war breaks out? I'll contact others to discuss this matter, but in the end, Dumbledore made up his mind. Since you suggested it, come to Hogwarts and become a teacher, Dumbledore said. Ah, Shen Fei was stunned. Muggle studies teacher, you will teach them about Muggles. The first step in Shen Fei's plan was to educate current wizards about the Muggle world. Compared to adults, whose personalities were already set, students were the most susceptible to change. Yes, I agree, Grindelwald nodded. Alright, the two agreed, and Shen Fei, now isolated and powerless, had no choice but to agree. Dumbledore was right, teaching wizards about the Muggle world in this world was difficult for anyone else. Muggle studies, the Ministry of Magic, and even Hogwarts all had departments and teachers for this purpose. However, because the vast majority of wizards, including Muggle-born wizards themselves, didn't care, it was completely useless. Speaking of which, this location is a good target for Voldemort. I don't know what time it is now, but it doesn't matter. If Voldemort really comes looking for him, it's just bad luck for him. Shen Fei wouldn't intervene unless the situation could be resolved peacefully, especially if it were Voldemort. If it were Voldemort, he would have launched a missile without hesitation. Even if he couldn't kill Voldemort, he could have easily escaped. Hogwarts, even though I'm not going there as a student, it doesn't matter. As Dumbledore and Grindelwald left together, apparently to discuss something, Shen Fei became excited. Coming to Harry's world without visiting Hogwarts would be a waste of time. He had better luck learning magic at Hogwarts than as a wild wizard or a dark wizard. Especially when it came to herbs and potions, there was no place in the world better equipped than Hogwarts. As for what Dumbledore and Grindelwald discussed, Shen Fei could probably guess it. It was nothing more than a question of whether he could be trusted. These two were top figures in the wizarding world. Of course, it was impossible for them to simply believe Shen Fei. It was just that what Shen Fei said was what they wanted to do, which led to the current outcome. Chapter 50 Dumbledore and Grindelwald, and grab my arm. Outside the protective shield of Nurmengard Castle, after Dumbledore left, Grindelwald said this to Shen Fei. Apparition, Shen Fei immediately grabbed Grindelwald's left arm. No one knew what Grindelwald and Dumbledore said to each other, but when the two appeared in front of him, Grindelwald had a wand in his hand. With a wand in his hand, this present certainly couldn't hold him. In the world of Harry Potter, the difference between having a wand and not having a wand is simply a world of difference, even greater than the difference between having a gun and not having a gun in the hands of ordinary people. After grabbing Grindelwald's arm, Shen Fei felt as if he had entered a constantly rotating space. When he reappeared, he was on the side of a street that looked very old. Most of the people on the street were wearing black robes. Diagon Alley. A wooden sign on each side told him where he was. Outside Nurmengard Castle, Shortly after Shen Fei and Grindelwald left, a golden halo silently opened. A figure in yellow robes emerged, their hood lifted to reveal a bald head. It was the Ancient One, the Sorcerer Supreme. He had unexpectedly arrived in this world. Shen Fei could hardly have imagined such a thing would happen. Gringotts, the Wizarding World Bank. Grindelwald had arrived here immediately after bringing Shen Fei to Diagon Alley. After presenting his credentials, the goblin staff at Gringotts immediately turned respectful. Number 444, after navigating a maze of underground tunnels, Grindelwald and Shen Fei arrived at the treasury. Grindelwald withdrew a large amount of gold coins, or rather, galleons. The untraceable extension charm, seeing the small bag filled with so many coins, Shen Fei immediately guessed what was going on. This spell was what Shen Fei most wanted to learn. Regarding the untraceable extension charm, the one that impressed Shen Fei most was Newt's trunk. It was truly amazing. "Anything you want to buy?" Grindelwald asked, smiling, after leaving Gringotts. "Ones," Shen Fei said after a moment's thought. In Harry Potter's world, wizards are determined entirely by talent, determined at birth. There's no such thing as an ordinary person becoming a wizard. Judging from Dumbledore and Grindelwald's attitudes, he's definitely a wizard, not a muggle. Whether this is innate or due to his training in Kamar-Taj magic, Shen Fei wasn't sure, but he was more inclined to believe it was. While Kamar-Taj wizards typically rely on blades for physical combat, the underlying principles reveal Kamar-Taj magic to a level of sophistication that borders on divine power. This aspect is simply unmatched in Harry Potter's world, where talent is the sole reliance. Ollivander's Wand Shop is a historic wand shop, producing the vast majority of wands used throughout England. Shen Fei was deeply curious about the wands of this world. Why didn't he buy a few extras? "He needs a wand," Grindelwald said bluntly upon entering the shop. After hearing Grindelwald's words, Ollivander immediately examined Shen Fei carefully. He then pulled a wand from one of the many wand boxes and handed it to Shen Fei. "This is made of ebony wood, the nerves of an eastern fireball dragon. Try it." Bang! Shen Fei took the wand, felt it for a moment, and then waved it, sending an invisible shockwave emanating from its tip. Magic doesn't necessarily require chanting spells. Like Shen Fei had just done, one can also launch attacks. A primary means of combat between wizards. In a real fight, it's not a duel, no one will give you time to chant spells. Using such attacks to buy time to unleash a spell is a common tactic. Alternatively, consider these attacks a magical surge, but since they're pure magic, their power is generally weaker. Next, they went to Flourish and Blots. After a moment's deliberation, Shen Fei bought all the books he'd read during his 7 years at Hogwarts, as well as a number of books on wizarding history and famous figures. Despite this somewhat strange request, Flourish and Blots was sold, likely due to Grindelwald's influence. Afterward, the two of them, using Grindelwald's apparition, arrived directly at King's Cross Station. Shen Fei was deeply curious about Diagon Alley, but while he could always visit it later, for now, he needed to let Grindelwald see some of the results of his plan. Dumbledore and Grindelwald were no fools, on the contrary, they were among the world's most intelligent individuals. Shen Fei's explanation contained many flaws, but they simply ignored them because of the plan's promise. Just like Grindelwald hadn't said anything when Shen Fei bought his wand and all the magic books. These items weren't cheap. His wand cost 6 gold galleons, one less than Harry Potter's. While this might seem like a small sum, it was actually quite expensive. Since most people in this world only have one wand in their lifetime, the high price might be a factor. Just look at Ron, whose wand broke and he had to tie it up, causing the spell to rebound. Not to mention the price of all those spellbooks. All spellbooks for grades 1 through 7 cost several times more than wands. After leaving King's Cross Station, Shen Fei and Grindelwald were on the move. Wizards knew very little about the Muggle world, let alone Grindelwald, who had been in prison for decades. Even with Dumbledore occasionally sharing news about the outside world, it was primarily about the wizarding world. First, let's exchange money. Before setting off, Shen Fei had brought a large amount of gold bars, which is arguably the universal currency of the multiverse. As for why gold was used, it probably had something to do with the metal's properties. Gold isn't just currency, it's also a raw material. Thanks to Ada's previous advice, exchanging money would have been quite a hassle. This world's technological level is too low. After buying a house in London and researching its technological capabilities, Shen Fei couldn't help but shake his head in disappointment. He had tried not to expect much from this world's technology, but after actually experiencing it, he was still deeply disappointed. Magic has suppressed the development of technology. The reason for this outcome was obvious: magic. It seems Carlson and I weren't lying after all. Shen Fei couldn't help but laugh, looking at the famous figures in magical history. Famous scientists like Newton and Einstein were all wizards. Even the invention of the nuclear bomb was primarily due to wizards. After reviewing the basics of magic, Shen Fei understood why this was the case. While wizards in this world were primarily determined by talent, they were still wizards, and the principle held that the smarter they were, the easier it was to become a wizard. Later, while discussing his past with Dumbledore and the war with Grindelwald, Shen Fei suddenly realized that the love-hate relationship between Grindelwald and Dumbledore was very similar to that between Red Skull and Captain America. In this world's World War II, Grindelwald was essentially Red Skull. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.